Chapter 1, The Inception. Until death. Su Caution experienced a tightening in her chest, making it difficult to breathe, as if something were obstructing her airway, creating an overwhelming discomfort. Gradually, she opened her eyes, though the scene before her remained somewhat blurred, illuminated by the flickering glow of a red candle. The curtains were drawn tightly, preventing Su from discerning whether it was day or night outside. A large, intricately carved bed adorned with floral embroidery stood nearby, accompanied by a small scented sachet that emitted a faint fragrance. The sheer light green gauze curtains hung down, contributing to a hazy ambience. Where was she? This was certainly not the third prince's mansion. Suddenly, Su felt an acute sense of disorientation. Her body was uncomfortable, the surroundings unfamiliar, and the presence of another person's breath beside her heightened her anxiety. What had transpired? Who are you? Where is this? Su's voice echoed through the spacious room, her tears cascading like a string of broken pearls. At that moment, her clothing was torn, leaving her in a state of vulnerability, trembling as if she were on the brink of confronting something terrifying. Little beauty, why are you shy? I'm coming, a man's voice taunted. Tears blurred her vision, flowing freely. Who could explain the chaos surrounding her? Rather than halting, the man's advances intensified, fueled by her pitiful state. Su understood her predicament but felt utterly powerless to escape. Her cries were her only recourse. Don't, please let me go. The man's greedy gaze filled Su with revulsion. He persisted, and her mind became a void, consumed by shame and despair. Su's wide eyes were fixed on the man before her, her once beautiful face now streaked with tears. She struggled, but the effects of the drug rendered her powerless. In desperation, she bit down hard on the man's arm. Her bite elicited a pained reaction, and the room fell into an eerie silence, the air turning frigid. Suddenly, he seized her hair and struck her forcefully, the sound of the slap resonating sharply. Su was sent sprawling to the ground with a thud. The man seethed. You dare to bite me? This slut, do you still believe you are the noble third princess? The prince has already given you to me, now you are even worse than a prostitute. Don't refuse to drink when offered, yet desire it when punished. Su's vision blurred, the metallic taste of blood filling her mouth as fresh blood trickled from the corner. Her right cheek swelled instantly from the blow, and the heat of her face turned to ice. She touched her cheeks, realizing they were wet. When had she begun to cry? Like a porcelain doll, she stared vacantly ahead, allowing her tears to fall and obscure her sight. Blue Wind, what right did he have to inflict such pain upon her repeatedly? What had she done to deserve this treatment? If he did not love her, why had he not refused when the emperor arranged their marriage? If she were not the one in his heart, why had he not sent a divorce letter to free her sooner? Why must he subject her to such torment? Hot tears, brimming with unending resentment, streamed down her swollen face as she glared at the man before her, filled with hatred. Go away, don't come near me again. Su Caution exclaimed, raising her head, her eyes brimming with resentment. Little beauty, I advise you to be obedient and serve me well. I will ensure you are treated properly. The man's corpulent face bore a lascivious expression as he inched closer to Su Caution. What's wrong with following me to enjoy a good life? Isn't it preferable to suffering alongside the third prince? Su Caution fought to suppress the nausea rising in her throat, slowly lifting her pale face to meet the gaze of the high-ranking official before her, asking each word deliberately. You said, was it the prince who gave me to you? The man paused, momentarily taken aback, and hastily replied, of course, the prince entrusted you to me, otherwise, as the third princess, how could I dare to abduct you from the palace? Hearing his words, her heart ached. She had thought that even if Blue Wind did not love her, he would not be so cruel as to treat her this way, yet she had underestimated his ruthlessness. You want me? The vulnerability in Su Caution's eyes was replaced by a chilling resolve as she softly inquired, her voice barely above a whisper. Her bloodless face bore a faint smile, reminiscent of a ray of sunlight piercing through the dark night. captivating all who beheld it. As long as you sincerely follow me, I assure you, I will treat you better than the third prince, the man vowed immediately. Want me? In your next life. In a sudden burst of defiance, Su Caution pushed the man away with all her strength, slamming her head into the pillar beside her. She slowly slid to the ground. The vivid red staining her face accentuated her pallid complexion. The man, momentarily stunned by her actions, was taken aback as he realized the beauty before him had transformed into a lifeless form. He gaped in shock, unable to comprehend the scene. What a tragedy, such a beautiful little beauty has perished. As Su Caution had resolved to end her life, the man, though injured, struggled to rise and shouted outside, "Someone, take this woman out and bury her." Upon hearing his command, a group of servants rushed in, only to be met with a chaotic sight, a pool of blood glaring under the candlelight, casting a terrifying glow. Su Caution's tears had yet to dry, her exquisite face was pale and devoid of color, resembling ashes. Even more horrifying was the wound on her forehead, still oozing blood, akin to a blooming spider lily, steeped in enchantment. In her final act of defiance, as she smashed her head against the pillar, all she could perceive was a wash of red before her eyes. She felt no pain, only an overwhelming fatigue, prompting her to slowly close her eyes. Yet the smile on her lips remained unyielding. "Blue Wind, you once claimed that even if you did not love me, you would never let me go, that you would confine me by your side, torturing me until death. Now, as you wished, I am dead. Are you satisfied?" Chapter 2, Rebirth. 1. Miss, please don't die, don't leave Grace Child. Miss, it's all Grace Child's fault for not taking better care of you, wake up. Grace Child is willing to die for you, the young female voice wept sorrowfully, her tone hoarse and seemingly unending. Beneath her long, closed, fan-shaped eyelashes, her furrowed brows conveyed deep unease in her slumber. As her eyelids felt heavy and unyielding, the sound of the anguished cry pierced through her haze, accompanied by a firm shaking. Startled, Su Caution awoke in a daze. "It hurts," was her immediate sensation upon regaining consciousness, her forehead throbbing painfully. The memory of being drugged and striking her head against a pillar flooded back to her. Miss. Grace Child cried out in despair, and upon hearing the familiar voice, Su Caution initially thought it was a figment of her imagination. Su Caution was momentarily stunned, her gaze fixed on the face before her, both unfamiliar and familiar, rendering her momentarily speechless. Her vacant, dull eyes locked onto Grace Child, causing the latter to exclaim, "Miss, what's wrong with you? Was this a dream?" Su Caution found it hard to believe. She would never forget this voice, it belonged to Grace Child, the maid who had grown up alongside her. In her previous life, Grace Child had tragically perished while protecting her, despite Su Caution's desperate pleas for mercy. Yet, fortune had smiled upon her, granting her a second chance at life. Therefore, she would not allow Grace Child to suffer any longer. Placing her hand on her chest, she still felt a sharp pain. Grace Child, Su Caution thought, unable to restrain her tears. "Miss, you're truly awake, that's wonderful." Grace Child's voice brimmed with relief, before she inquired more cautiously, "Miss, how do you feel? Are you hungry? Would you like some water? Is your head still hurting?" Observing Grace Child's worried expression, despite her pale and bloodless visage, Su Caution managed a faint smile. "It doesn't hurt." "What happened to me?" Grace Child was taken aback, her eyes reddening once more as she reproached herself, "Young lady, it's all because this servant failed to protect you. The second young lady came to demand Madame's legacy, you didn't want her to take Madame's belongings, and during the struggle, she pushed you down, causing your head to strike a rock. This servant was useless, unable to safeguard you, nearly causing you harm." Su Harmony had attempted to seize her mother's legacy. If her memory served her correctly, in her previous life, the phoenix zither and jade flute left to her by her mother were taken by Sue Harmony when she was just 14. So, had she returned to the age of 14? A slight smile graced Sue Caution's lips. At this moment, she had not yet wed Blue Wind, she was still the obedient, gentle, and shy girl, her tragic life had yet to unfold. Now that fate had granted Sue Caution a second chance, she vowed to be different this time. She yearned to escape the confines that had imprisoned her for so long and to carve out a life of freedom for herself. As for those who had wronged her, she would ensure they experienced despair, hatred, and profound suffering. She swore that in this life, she would become their nightmare. Sue Caution smiled warmly at Grace Child, who knelt by the bed, tears glistening in her eyes. From now on, we will be the ones to bully others, no one will dare to bully us again. Stand up. Miss. Grace Child was pulled to her feet by Sue Caution, her pale face reflecting concern. Although Miss rarely smiled, Grace Child knew that when she did, it was beautiful. Yet, at this moment, something felt different. The young lady's smile radiated like dawn, her demeanor calm and composed, still familiar yet distinctly transformed. The Sue Caution of the past had never smiled in such a manner, she had always carried an air of caution, weakness, and reserve. Even in smiles, the sadness in her eyes had been evident, which had led to her being bullied by the second young lady and others. But now, the young lady's smile emanated from the heart. It was even more enchanting, as if she were enveloped in a soft glow, captivating all who beheld her. The sensation was indescribable, it was clear that Sue Caution had become a different person. Chapter 3, Rebirth, 2, Huh. Sue Caution lifted her head, gazing gently at Grace Child. In her previous life, this girl was the only person who treated her with kindness. Grace Child looked at her young lady, bewildered, and asked, "Young lady, are you all right?" "I'm fine, I just woke up and my head is a bit dizzy." Sue Caution shook her head, realizing she had frightened the girl, and softly reassured her, "I apologize for scaring you." Her cold gaze shifted elsewhere, her brows knitting together in concern. The room was even more dilapidated than the coarse cloth dress worn by the girl. Her penetrating gaze surveyed the surroundings, the table was legless, the chairs were broken, and the wooden windows and doors appeared to be rotting, on the verge of collapse. The teapot and drinking cups were worn and clearly had been there for an extended period. In her memories of her previous life, after her mother passed away when she was 6, her father, the Prime Minister, had shown her no regard. The person he cherished most, aside from himself, was his eldest daughter, Sue's subtle charm, whom he had doted on for over a decade. While the other daughters were not respected, none endured the abject misery she did, lacking sufficient food and clothing, living in a crumbling house. Her father's wives frequently bullied and scolded her. Losing her mother at a young age was one hardship, but even the other young ladies and lowly servants dared to mistreat her, kneeling, striking her palms, pinching her fingers, and whipping her, among other abuses. She thought, "Forget it, in my previous life, I was too weak. My only hope was to wait until I came of age, and if fortunate, to marry into a normal family, where I would no longer be ordered around." She believed that as long as her husband could provide a peaceful home, she would be content to live a simple life. It mattered not if he loved her, she did not love him either. All she desired was a life of tranquility. However, her father married her to a man as cold and heartless as a devil. Her entire life was ruined by Blue Wind. Grace Child, observing Sue Caution's increasingly frigid demeanor, cautiously stepped back and said, "Miss, have you forgotten? Tomorrow is the old lady's birthday. The First Lady has made an exception to have a new set of clothes crafted for you, using the finest silk and the latest designs. I brought it for you to try on to see if it fits." Sue Caution regained her composure and replied, "Tomorrow is grandmother's birthday." "Yes, both the first and second masters have returned." "Oh." Grace Child observed Sue Caution, who remained in a daze, pondering to herself, Miss has been in this state ever since the second Miss bumped into her. Could it be that she struck her head? As she contemplated, she noticed Su Caution slowly approach the bronze mirror, quietly gazing at her reflection. Although her appearance was not particularly striking, her fair skin and well-proportioned figure lent her an undeniable radiance. She ran her hand through her exceptionally long, jet-black hair, which cascaded down, softer than brocade and incredibly comforting to the touch. Eventually, her hand rested on her face, her fingertips delicately tracing her features. Her visage was unremarkable, yet her eyes sparkled brightly, reminiscent of stars, clear as a pristine stream. Her eyelashes were thin, long, and elegantly curved, enhancing her beauty. Despite being the closest of kin, it was surprising that the man she had called father for over a decade, who had sought to elevate himself through her, had not anticipated that her appearance would pale in comparison to her mother's, who was renowned as the most beautiful woman in the Blue Kingdom. Looking at her reflection, even with makeup applied, she found no connection to beauty and smiled ruefully. In her previous life, the two daughters of the Prime Minister's residence were constant subjects of discussion throughout the Blue Kingdom. It was said that the eldest daughter, Su's subtle charm, possessed not only an ethereal beauty and a kind heart but also excelled in poetry, songwriting, calligraphy, and painting from the age of 5. In contrast, the second daughter, the fourth young lady, Su Caution, was labeled a waste, characterized by her ordinary appearance, dullness, and timidity. The two sisters were starkly different, one being the pride of the Prime Minister's residence, while the other was viewed as a burden. Noticing Su Caution's daze, Grace Child quickly approached and said, "Young lady. The old lady is in good spirits today and is currently in the back garden. The other young ladies and young masters have all come to attend to her. It has been a few days since you last greeted the old lady, why not visit her as well? No rush. Since they are all present, I shall refrain from joining the gathering. I can come tomorrow," Su Caution replied calmly. Su Caution's father was Su Ha, the current Prime Minister, and the family comprised 7 wives, including Su Caution's late mother and the 3rd and 5th concubines who had mysteriously passed away. That year, while returning to the capital to report on his duties, his father encountered robbers. On the brink of death, he was fortuitously saved by his mother, who was skilled in medicine. After half a month of care from her, his father, who had been gravely injured, recovered. Her beauty, dignity, gentleness, and kindness touched the deepest part of his father's heart. Before departing, he asked her if she would marry him. Thus, he brought her back to the Prime Minister's residence. At that time, several maids and 2 concubines already resided in his father's household. In addition to his affection for her, he felt indebted to her for saving his life, leading him to relinquish the position of the main wife in favor of her. The old lady was immensely displeased by his sudden choice of an outsider as the main wife, yet she could not alter his resolute decision. As a Prime Minister, he had chosen a woman of unknown origin, which further incensed the old lady, who held social status and family reputation in high regard. Unable to confront her son, the old lady directed her ire toward Su Caution's mother. From the moment Su Caution was born, the old lady intensified her efforts to make life difficult for both Su Caution and her mother due to the birth of a daughter. Additionally, the other concubines exploited the situation to harm her, and the servants bullied them. Su Caution's mother lived in sorrow and gloom until her untimely death from illness when Su Caution was just 3 years old. In her previous life, in an attempt to please her grandmother, Su Caution had gone to Plum Garden when the old lady had just awakened. Without the old lady's orders, she could only stand foolishly in the courtyard for nearly half an hour, trembling under the scornful gazes of passing servants, becoming a source of ridicule for her siblings. In this life, she vowed not to endure humiliation or rely on others any longer. Given a second chance, she was determined to fight for herself. Chapter 4, Celebrating Grandma's Birthday. 1. The spring breeze wafted gently, the sky was clear, and the warm sunlight cast a golden hue upon the ground. Today marked the 60th birthday of the matriarch, and Su Caution reflected that the moment had nearly arrived, prompting her to walk gracefully toward the plum garden. As she traversed numerous corridors adorned with hanging copper bird cages suspended by small bamboo hooks, she encountered nightingales, cymbals, red birds, magpies, and even exotic species such as red-necked flamingos, blue-necked flamingos, tiger-skinned flamingos, Pegasus, and red-headed flamingos, with hundreds of birds singing harmoniously, a delight to the ears. She meticulously observed her surroundings. Every branch and blade of grass felt both familiar and foreign, filling her heart with a tumult of emotions. Fourth sister, fourth sister. A clear voice interrupted her reverie. Su Caution was momentarily taken aback. She recognized this voice all too well. It belonged to the fifth young lady, Su Cloud, the daughter of the fourth wife of the Shu family. A flicker of coldness crossed Su Caution's eyes as she slowly turned her head. A girl of 13 or 14, clad in a crimson silk short dress and of similar age, approached her. Among the daughters of the Shu family, aside from Su Caution, who possessed a delicate beauty, the other young ladies were all strikingly attractive, with the eldest and second daughters renowned as the capital's most celebrated beauties. Su Cloud had lovely features, yet her high cheekbones, thin lips, and somewhat harsh appearance, combined with her slightly darker complexion, necessitated a thick layer of powder to mask her natural brightness, rendering her visage stiff and artificial. Su Caution stifled a cold laugh and remarked, "Fifth younger sister, how are you?" "Elder sister, I heard you fell a few days ago. Are you well now?" "When I received the news, I was quite worried, but my mother insisted I assist in preparing for grandmother's birthday celebration, so I truly couldn't leave." "I hope you won't hold it against me," Su Cloud replied, her expression apologetic. "Indeed, fourth young lady, our young lady was so concerned that she frequently inquired about your well-being. It was only after fourth madam informed her that you had received medical attention and were no longer in distress that she finally felt relieved," echoed Dong Qing, Su Cloud's personal maid. Su Caution rolled her eyes at this superfluous explanation, stepping forward to gently grasp Su Cloud's hand, feigning reproach. "What are you saying? In this household, you are the one who cares for your elder sister the most. How could I possibly blame you?" That's good," Su Cloud replied, patting her chest as if finally at ease. "It's getting late, younger sister, we must hurry, or we shall be late," Su Caution said with a gentle smile. "Indeed, let us proceed swiftly." Upon entering the old lady's courtyard, Su Caution startled both the matriarch and the maid stationed at the door. Lin Mama, a trusted maid of the old lady, stepped forward and inquired, "Is the young lady fully recovered?" Grace Child, the maid accompanying Su Caution, quickly shook her head, stating, "Our young lady has not yet fully recovered. The doctor indicated she could go out and no longer needed to remain in her room." As soon as she was able to rise from bed, the fourth young lady insisted on coming to greet the old lady. Lady Law appeared taken aback, regarding Su Caution with surprise. However, she swiftly regained her composure and smiled warmly. "The fourth young lady is truly filial. The old lady will undoubtedly be very pleased." Both Su Caution and Grace Child noted Lin Mama's astonishment, understanding the underlying reason, yet refraining from voicing it. At that moment, a maid entered and announced, "Fourth young lady, please come in quickly." As Su Caution stepped into the room, she overheard Lady La murmur, "Strange, why has the fourth young lady suddenly altered her demeanor?" Su Caution smiled inwardly, contemplating, she has indeed changed her temperament. The old lady resided in the inner chamber, prompting Su Caution and Grace Child to proceed directly inside. The floor gleamed with golden tiles resembling a mirror, while exquisite octagonal palace lamps hung overhead. A partition of sandalwood inlaid with ivory and glass flowers separated the space, and the remaining furnishings, crafted from pear and rosewood, exuded opulence, adorned with intricate carvings that evoked admiration. Su Caution approached respectfully and saluted the old lady seated in the main position. Jin Xian pays her respects to grandmother, mother, and the two concubines. In the room, the old lady reclined on a warm bed, clad in a large coat of sapphire silk embroidered with symbols of 5 blessings and longevity, her hair adorned with a set of silver mouse skin hairpins featuring a central jade stone. Acknowledging Su Caution's salute with a slight nod, she inquired, "Has the wound on your head healed?" "Thank you, Grandma, for your concern for your granddaughter. The wound on my head is no longer a matter of concern." For reasons unknown, upon hearing this, Su Caution's eyes suddenly glistened with tears. A peculiar sensation enveloped the room as all present sensed the shift. Chapter 5, Celebrating Grandma's Birthday, 2, Oh my, you 2 sisters have arrived quite early. I assumed you had fallen asleep and was about to send someone to fetch you. Just as the 2 exchanged pleasantries, a sudden voice interrupted. Su Caution turned toward the sound and saw a young woman clad in a light yellow silk blouse, cinched at the waist, paired with a long pleated skirt, standing beside the second lady, Beauty Elegance. With striking features, raised eyebrows, and a curious expression, she was none other than the second young lady of the Shu family, Su Harmony. Su Cloud cast a glance at Su Harmony before shifting her attention to the slightly plump, gentle-faced old lady seated at the head of the table. With a playful smile, she said, "Grandma, don't listen to second sister. How could Yunyi forget your birthday? This morning, Yunyi rose early to prepare your favorite hibiscus sticky rice cake, along with the jade Avalokiteshvara statue that Yunyi personally selected for you, wishing you fortune as vast as the East Sea and longevity as enduring as the South Mountain." Upon finishing her statement, she gestured to Eastern Purity to present the cake and a box containing the statue. The old lady beamed at this and waved at Su Cloud, saying with a smile, "My Yunyi knows how to please others. Come and sit beside me. Grandma, please try it, this was made by Yunyi herself." Su Cloud gracefully approached the old lady, opened the cake box, and placed the cake before her. It's delicious. My Yunyi's culinary skills have improved significantly." The old lady picked up a piece of sticky rice cake, took a bite, and remarked, "Thank you for your kind words, Grandma." Su Cloud's face lit up with joy. Afterward, she turned to Su Harmony with a challenging look, her expression rife with contempt and disdain, causing Su Harmony's complexion to pale. "However, how long did it take to prepare this plate of cake? Don't think that Grandma is old and easily deceived, I suspect you, young lady, enjoy sleeping in." The old lady raised her index finger and gently tapped Su Cloud's forehead, her tone affectionate and indulgent. "No, Grandma, Yunyi woke at dawn to start working, but on the way here, she encountered fourth sister." Su Cloud tugged at the old lady's sleeve, pouting as she spoke, her voice tinged with a hint of grievance. The implication was that her tardiness was due to her sister. Su Caution smirked inwardly. No matter how she explained, she was merely defending herself. Moreover, she had never been favored by her grandmother, and she would undoubtedly bear the burden of disrespecting her elders. Throughout her life, Su Cloud had a penchant for feigning vulnerability to elicit sympathy from her elders, subsequently placing blame on others. In her previous life, she had endured silently, never voicing her discontent, but now, reborn, Su Caution would no longer allow her to manipulate the situation. Sensing the old lady's displeasure, Su Caution trembled, pulling back her head, her hands clutching her robe as she said, "Jin Xian just woke up this morning and recalled that the 100-year painting completed yesterday had a few areas that were not embroidered well. I didn't expect that after finishing it and stepping outside, fifth sister would call out from behind." Her voice quivered with emotion. Who wouldn't know how to feign innocence? Furthermore, many in the room were eager to see Su Cloud falter, and she merely needed to play the role of the aggrieved character convincingly. "Indeed. I didn't anticipate that this fourth girl would be so talented, she already knows how to embroider a 100-year painting at such a young age." The first lady, Shen graceful, adorned in a honey-colored silk dress from Xiangzhou, with a round neck and wide sleeves, and a gold-plated phoenix hairpin, sat in the first seat on the left, smiling as she remarked, "Mother, this painting reflects far more thought than that hibiscus sticky rice cake." As the adage suggests, slow and steady wins the race. Fifth sister must have invested considerable time and effort into the cake, prompting her to call fourth sister from behind. Sue Harmony deliberately emphasized the word behind and remarked, "Observe closely." Fifth sister's makeup today is exceptionally beautiful, it must have required significant time. Today marks Grandma's birthday, and many young masters are sure to attend. No wonder fifth sister. At this juncture, Sue Harmony covered her mouth and chuckled. "You." Upon hearing this, Sue Cloud immediately rose, her face flushed with anger. Fourth Madame Solar Snow noticed her daughter's loss of composure and quickly shot a glare at Sue Harmony, stating, "What are you implying, second miss?" While hibiscus sticky rice cakes may not demand the same effort as a century-old painting, they still represent the heartfelt intentions of our fifth young lady. They cannot be compared to someone merely purchasing a few porcelain items as a birthday gift. Sue Harmony's expression stiffened momentarily before she smiled and replied, "What are you suggesting, fourth aunt?" "Grandma is celebrating her birthday. As her descendants, regardless of the gifts we present, they are all given with sincerity. We do not distinguish between good and bad." Yatong was merely jesting. "All right, everyone, let us cease this discussion. Today is Mother's birthday. Let us allow fourth young lady to present the 100-year painting for Mother to admire." The first madam, noticing the old madam's slight displeasure, smoothed her sleeves and spoke calmly. "Indeed, fourth young lady, why not go and wish your grandmother a happy birthday?" a lady suggested. Perceiving the shift in the gazes around her, Sue Caution secretly chuckled to herself, timidly retrieving the box containing the 100-year painting from Grace Child beside her. She nervously approached the center of the hall, handed it to Lady Law beside the old madam, and softly stated, "Granddaughter wishes Grandma longevity and good health." "Oh, I did not anticipate that the fourth maid's handwriting and embroidery would be so commendable. Although the technique is somewhat immature, the intention is the most valuable." The first lady observed the embroidery that Lady Law had unveiled and smiled. "Indeed, old lady, I had not noticed this before." Lady Law presented the embroidery to the old lady. Quite good," the old lady nodded, the corners of her mouth slightly lifting as she regarded Sue Caution, who stood in the center of the hall with her head bowed, twisting her robe. She remarked, "You rose so early, you must not have eaten anything. Do not stand there. Find a place to sit and enjoy some cake." "Thank you, Grandma." Sue Caution lifted her head, her expression brightening, but as soon as she met Sue Harmony's disdainful gaze beside the old lady, her joy faltered, and she quickly lowered her head again, hastily seeking a seat in the most secluded corner, where she leaned in to sit down. Observing the haughty Sue Harmony beside the old lady, the irate Sue Cloud, and the timid Sue Caution in the distant corner, everyone discreetly shook their heads. It seemed that the second and fifth young ladies of the Shu family were not as dignified and well-tempered as they were often described. The old lady, glancing at the angry Sue Cloud beside her and the timid figure in the far corner, felt a twinge of disappointment. "It appears I have indulged the two girls, Yatong and Yunyi, too much in the past." Sensing the shift in the atmosphere, Sue Cloud's expression grew increasingly grim. Although today was not a grand celebration, the female relatives of the Shu family and close friends of the Prime Minister's residence had all gathered. Most of these individuals were influential figures in the capital. Sue Caution was keenly aware that she could not afford to leave a negative impression on them. Furthermore, she had heard that the elders were currently considering marriages for several unmarried sisters. At this critical juncture, she, Sue Caution, could not be perceived as stubborn and unruly over such a trivial matter. Chapter 6, The Arrival of the Nobleman, 1. While Sue Cloud contemplated how to rectify the situation, a maid hurriedly lifted the curtain and entered, announcing, "Old madam, madams, young misses, the Grand Master has sent word that Consort Zhao has arrived and is currently at Clear Wind Bamboo Grove. Please invite the old madam, along with the madams and young misses, to greet her." "What? She has arrived?" The old madam was taken aback and quickly instructed, "Hurry and inform the Grand Master that we will be there immediately." "Yes, old madam." The maid bowed slightly and swiftly exited the hall. "Mother remains the most esteemed, Consort Zhao has personally come to wish you a happy birthday." The first madam rose and stepped forward to support the old madam's arm. "That is only fitting, our mother and Consort Zhao's mother have been close friends for many years." The second madam promptly moved to the other side of the old madam, and together with the first madam, assisted her. A few kind words elicited a bright smile from the old lady. "All right, you two have conspired to flatter this old lady early in the morning. Let us go quickly, we must not keep our guests waiting," the old lady said with a smile. Accompanied by her laughter and the congratulations and support of those around her, a group of people noisily made their way toward Clear Wind Bamboo Grove. Prior to her marriage, the old lady had been close friends with Consort Zhao's biological mother, Old Lady Lu, fostering a strong relationship between the Lu and Shu families. In the past, the daughter of the Lu family, Zhao Yaji, had caught the attention of the current emperor and was appointed as a noble concubine. However, following Old Lady Lu's passing, the connection between the two families gradually diminished. In the last 2 years, aside from sending gifts during holidays, there had been little interaction. Yet now, Consort Zhao had defied expectations by coming to wish the old lady a happy birthday, surprising everyone. Consort Zhao. That person's mother. Su Caution recalled vividly that it was on this day in her previous life that she first encountered Blue Wind. She absent-mindedly followed the others to Clear Wind Bamboo Grove. Clear Wind Bamboo Grove was situated to the west of Shu Mansion, with a lake surrounded by willows in the southeast corner of the grove. A small bridge spanned the lake, leading to a bamboo forest, and behind the bamboo grove lay a flower hall adorned with large chrysanthemums in various colors, pink and white, creating an exceptionally beautiful scene despite the autumn season. Upon reaching the entrance, everyone beheld Consort Zhao, flanked by a group of palace maids, entering. The imperial concubine wore a purple brocade robe, its collar embroidered with gold-threaded butterflies and the hem adorned with auspicious cloud patterns, embellished with gems. Her long, narrow phoenix eyes sparkled with charm, and the phoenix hairpin in her hair bun was decorated with a pearl, with cascading tassels that shimmered, enhancing her captivating beauty. Instantly, everyone in the courtyard knelt, and Eastern Purity exclaimed, "Greetings to your highness. May your highness live 1,000 years." Consort Zhao smiled gracefully, her voice gentle yet dignified. "This palace has come to wish the old lady a long life, there is no need for such formality. Please rise." "Thank you, your highness." Upon hearing Consort Zhao's words, those kneeling carefully stood. Consort Zhao approached the old lady, supported by the first and second ladies, and affectionately took her hand. "Old lady, I have brought a special gift from the palace." With that, she gestured to someone behind her to present an exquisite brocade box. Her fingertips lightly brushed the brocade box, the red jade warmed to the touch, yet the contents felt as cold as a winter's day. This brocade box was a rare treasure at first glance. Consort Zhao gently opened the brocade box, smiling as she said, "This is the 1,000-year-old ginseng bestowed upon me by the emperor. Today, I present it to the old lady, wishing her a long and happy life." Everyone gazed at the 1,000-year-old ginseng within the brocade box, unable to contain their astonishment. The ginseng root featured a long stem, numerous roots, smooth skin, deep veins, and elongated, sparse roots, clearly indicating its extraordinary value. The old lady was taken aback by the generosity. "Your Majesty, this gift is far too precious. The 1,000-year-old ginseng bestowed upon you was intended to nourish your health. How could this old lady accept it?" Despite being in her 40s, Consort Zhao retained her beauty through diligent care. She smiled and replied, "What you say is not correct. I recall that when my mother was alive, she and the old lady shared a very close bond. How could we measure that friendship with a mere ginseng root after so many years? Moved by Consort Zhao's words, the old lady responded, "Thank you, Your Highness. It is windy outside, please come into the main hall." Consort Zhao smiled and followed the old lady's lead into the main hall. One by one, everyone entered, taking their seats in order. Su Caution found a secluded corner to sit quietly, her expression composed. Chapter 7, The Arrival of the Nobleman. 2, Madam, it has been quite some time since we last met. You have become even more beautiful, while I seem to have aged in an instant, remarked Consort Zhao, smiling at the madam who stood solemnly beside the elder madam. Your Highness is jesting, you are above all, truly noble. Everyone knows that the imperial concubine is the most favored, while I am merely an ordinary woman, lacking the same fortune as Your Highness, the madam replied, taken aback by Consort Zhao's initial mention of her, her expression rife with flattery. Upon hearing the madam's compliments, Consort Zhao's lips curled into a smug smile, and she remained silent. It has been a while, Fifth Highness. I hope you have been well, inquired the second madam. Consort Zhao's expression faltered slightly, her smile stiffening as she responded, the Fifth Highness has been in good spirits recently, though he caught a cold a few days ago, which is why I did not send anyone to convey birthday wishes to the elder madam. It was common knowledge that the third prince's mother, Consort Luo, had succumbed to complications from childbirth, immediately entrusting the still infant third prince to Consort Zhao, who at that time had no son. However, just 6 months later, Consort Zhao gave birth to the fifth prince, Michael Wind. The fifth prince had been frail since childhood, requiring medication nearly year-round, which caused Consort Zhao considerable concern. The second madam's mention of her pain naturally displeased her. The fifth prince is an extraordinary individual, he must be blessed with great fortune. Your Highness, please do not worry, the old lady interjected, casting a disapproving glance at the second madam for her indiscretion. Realizing her error, the second madam lowered her head and ceased speaking. Consort Zhao's expression softened slightly at this. I have heard that the young ladies of the Prime Minister's mansion are all talented and beautiful, dignified and virtuous. Today, I must meet these remarkable young women. Upon hearing this, the old lady quickly gestured to Su Harmony and Su Cloud, who were seated nearby, saying, Your Highness, these are my second and fifth young ladies. Su Cloud and Su Harmony approached Consort Zhao gracefully, their demeanor dignified and elegant, their smiles bright and gentle, truly captivating. What beautiful young ladies, with such commendable appearances, Consort Zhao remarked, carefully observing the two. Your Highness is too kind, the old lady replied, feeling pleased yet maintaining a modest exterior. The two young ladies respectfully saluted Consort Zhao before returning to their seats with a sense of satisfaction. The old lady nodded approvingly, then scanned the room, calling out to Su Caution, who was hiding in the corner, Jin Xian, why are you hiding there? Come and greet the imperial concubine. Afterward, she turned to Consort Zhao with an apologetic smile, saying, This is my fourth daughter, she has always been shy and rarely ventures out. She is unfamiliar with the rules, and I hope Your Highness will forgive her. If it were not necessary, she likely would not have wished to introduce her in front of everyone. Su Caution secretly grimaced, hastily standing and approaching Consort Zhao, flustered as she saluted. Compared to the previous two, her demeanor was indeed markedly different. Having experienced her past life, she understood that Consort Zhao despised those who acted timidly and lacked manners. Consort Zhao frowned slightly, commenting, Your appearance is also elegant. She then turned her head and smiled, the old lady and the Prime Minister have certainly excelled in raising their children, all three young ladies exhibit a refined understanding of etiquette, their beauty is truly enviable. When it comes to child-rearing methods, they cannot compare to the noble concubine. The fifth prince is gentle and elegant, while the third prince is both cultured and martial, possessing a remarkable demeanor, the first madam flattered. Consort Zhao's smile appeared somewhat forced, she did not directly respond to the second madam's comment, instead smiling at Su Caution and the other two. Observing this, the first and second madams exchanged surprised glances, their expressions stiffening as they regarded one another. Su Caution cast a discreet smile at the first and second madams, who were evidently anxious about the possibility of their biological son-in-law being taken by the other. Little did they know that the family of their future husband had no intention of allowing either the third or fifth highness to marry their daughters. The two concubines were likely to find that their hopes would only lead to disappointment. On the surface, Consort Zhao appeared to care for the third highness as if he were her own child. However, in reality, she regarded him as a thorn in her side, often covertly undermining him and plotting against him. Yet, due to the fifth highness's frail health, she was compelled to rely on the third highness. Despite her true feelings, Consort Zhao had to feign the demeanor of a benevolent mother. In her previous life, Su Caution was deemed a burden to the Prime Minister's residence, lacking both talent and beauty. Her weak disposition and low status within the Shu family drew the attention of Consort Zhao. 6 months later, she married the third prince, elated to wed the man who had ultimately ruined her life. The third prince has arrived. A loud announcement suddenly echoed, startling Consort Zhao, who had been engaged in pleasant conversation with the old lady. A flicker of discomfort crossed her eyes. Before anyone could react, a tall and handsome young man, clad in a fox brocade robe, strolled in with an air of calmness and leisure. "Greetings, third prince." The entire Shu family, with the exception of Consort Zhao, knelt in respect. There is no need for formalities. Blue Wind waved his hand and approached the old lady, assisting her to her feet. Su Caution watched intently as he moved gracefully, each step exuding elegance that momentarily left her breathless. The purple-golden hem of his robe created a flowing arc, while his embroidered shoes glided across the threshold, followed by a figure of remarkable poise. Adorned with a purple-golden jade crown and a tailored brocade robe, the sleeves and hem were embellished with large purple spider lilies in gold thread, enhancing his graceful stature. His features were strikingly handsome, as if sculpted, with defined angles. His brows resembled distant mountains, and his phoenix-like eyes, dark as ink, sparkled like stars, with the depths resembling a clear blue lake, shimmering and profound. His demeanor was a blend of clarity and coldness, nobility and majesty, all while maintaining an extraordinary elegance. The cold seriousness in his jet-black eyes conveyed a calm and reserved temperament that could instill fear. It was unmistakably the third Prince Blue Wind. Such a man captivated attention at first glance, particularly among women. However, it was evident that Su Caution, now reborn, was not among them. Su Caution's hand clenched slowly within her sleeve. Her father's cheerful words echoed in her mind, "Jin Xian is obedient, smart, and well-behaved. Father naturally has to choose a good husband for you. The third Prince Blue Wind is a handsome young man, smarter than others, and is a perfect match for you. Jin Xian, if you marry him, you will undoubtedly have a good life." The first madam had also chimed in. Indeed, every marriageable woman in the capital would aspire to be the third princess consort. Jin Xian, you are truly fortunate. Yet, the subsequent events, a bird with its wings brutally broken, drenched in blood and feathers, were a pain she would never forget. Su Caution narrowed her eyes, concealing the mocking smile that had inadvertently surfaced. Taking a deep breath, she felt the blood coursing back through her, transforming her irreconcilable hatred into a surge of courage that flowed through her veins. "Your son greets the Empress." The Third Highness Blue Wind respectfully saluted Consort Zhao, who occupied the main seat. A glimmer of profound meaning flickered in her beautiful eyes, and her expression revealed a subtle, obscuring her thoughts. Blue Wind instructed someone to present the birthday gift prepared for the old lady, a luxurious white mink coat, crafted from the fur of the rare spirit beast, the snow fox. It was said to not only provide warmth but also replenish blood and qi, making it a rare treasure. Third Highness has come in person. This old lady regrets not being able to greet him properly. I hope your Highness will forgive me. The old lady, taken aback by the Third Highness's gift, quickly invited him to the main table, though she pondered what had prompted such notable figures to visit on this day. Chapter 8. Profound resentment. The arrival of the third prince elevated the old lady's birthday banquet to a new pinnacle. Those with keen insight recognized that the presence of both the third prince and consort Zhao today likely concealed a deeper motive. Could it pertain to the general's daughters? At that moment, Lady La approached the elderly woman. "Madam, the flower hall is prepared, shall we?" The elderly woman cast a glance at consort Zhao beside her, then smiled and inquired, "Your Highness, the flower hall is prepared, may we dine now?" Consort Zhao smiled warmly. "Today marks the birthday celebration of the esteemed matriarch. She is the guest of honor, and I am merely a visitor. All arrangements will be at her discretion." "Indeed." The elderly woman nodded and then proclaimed to the gathering, "It is getting late, let us celebrate." As soon as she concluded her remarks, the first lady rose to assist the elderly woman. The second lady arrived a moment too late and could only trail behind the old woman with a look of discontent, making her way toward the flower hall. The flower hall is in close proximity to Clear Wind Bamboo Grove. Simply traverse the corridor. Although winter has concluded, the weather remains somewhat brisk. Earthworms continue to thrive in the flower hall. The tables and chairs are prepared, adorned with an array of snacks, fruits, and jams. Individuals select their own seating arrangements. Once all guests were seated, the maids and maidservants stood by respectfully and promptly served a continuous array of cold dishes, appetizers, and hot entrees. Following a series of toasts and salutations, the banquet commenced officially. Consort Zhao occupied the principal seat, his demeanor exuding dignity and nobility, while the old lady sat beside him, her countenance radiating warmth and joy. The eldest lady positioned herself to the left of the old lady, adjacent to consort Zhao. Observing this arrangement, Su Harmony promptly took a seat next to consort Zhao, both displaying a measured blend of flattery and benevolence. The first madam and consort Zhao shared a strong rapport, frequently revisiting familiar topics and attentively serving food to consort Zhao, subtly sidelining the second madam. Although the second madam felt a sense of discomfort, she found it inappropriate to express her feelings, so she could only manage an awkward smile while sitting to the right of the old madam, occasionally contributing a few remarks. Su Caution discreetly selected a secluded seat, her expression faint and distant, as though none of this were relevant to her. She faintly recalled that 3 months hence, consort Zhao would petition the emperor for a marriage, which would please her father, effectively alleviating a burden. Blue Wind would also formally enter her life. Recalling his gentle and refined visage along with his resolute determination, her emotions grew increasingly complex. She understood that, deep down, he had always harbored affection for Su's subtle charm, the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister and her elder sister, a girl whose beauty resembled that of a fairy. However, her father had no intention of marrying his cherished daughter to him. Su's subtle charm, akin to a celestial being, had been elevated by the Prime Minister and the Grand Madam since childhood, nurtured according to the Empress's standards. She was well versed in the arts, including the zither, painting, poetry, and music. How could such a haughty woman deign to notice him, a third highness lacking support and deemed insignificant by the emperor? Yet, little did he realize that beneath her gentle and ethereal facade lay a heart that was both cruel and malevolent. She was not the sole woman in the palace. As if to retaliate for her assumption of the role of third princess consort, a position that rightfully belonged to the woman of his dreams, his palace became populated with women. She had no desire to vie for affection, her only wish was to live peacefully within the palace. However, not everyone shared her tranquil disposition, as serene as the clouds and wind. Those women engaged in fierce competition, employing every tactic to undermine her and conspiring against her. If she were truly insignificant to him, then why would a man of his intelligence consistently hold her accountable, swayed by the flattering words of those women? Even though he did not love me, while I was carrying his child, he chose to believe the words of others and insisted that I was having an affair with the guard. No matter how I tried to explain, it was futile. How could he have the heart to compel me to take abortion pills? That was a small life, his own flesh and blood, how could he? When I was appalled to discover the pool of blood between my legs, I knelt and embraced his legs, weeping and imploring him not to leave, pleading for him to seek a doctor to save our flesh and blood. However, he coldly and disdainfully kicked me away, declaring, that harlot, daring to engage in an affair behind this king's back, still expects this king to save her and that adulterer's illegitimate child. Humph, what a delusion! If it were not for her old prime minister father's reputation, she would have perished 1,000 times over. Like a shattered kite, I was cast aside. Intermingled with the rain, the white robe became stained with blood. The frigid rain pelted me, and no one took notice. Lying on the ground, eyes closed, I believed I would perish in this manner. I was intentionally obstructed by the palace, yet he remained unresponsive, cold and indifferent, regardless of the grievances I endured. I never voiced a complaint. I once naively believed that if the emperor sanctioned the marriage, he would be my husband for life. In time, I hoped to soften his heart, as cold and unyielding as stone. But I was mistaken, gravely mistaken. I could only retreat to my room, silently awaiting the cooling of my heart, and ultimately, he pushed me to the edge. When he held the bowl of medicine and compelled me to drink it, as my flesh and blood transformed into a pool of blood, my heart became entirely numb. I began to despise the man I referred to as husband. Why did he treat me with such cruelty? Upon opening my eyes, I discovered myself in close proximity to an unfamiliar man. How peculiar, my appearance is unremarkable, lacking the allure of my sisters, though I possess a certain elegance. Blue Wind truly relinquished me to another. A mere instrument to gratify the esteemed minister at court. Even now, he refuses to release me. How can he so brazenly demean me in this manner? You have caused me to lose my loved ones and endure immense humiliation. Even in death, I will not forgive you. However, God did not forsake me in the end. I did not perish. The tribulations of my former life, I shall undoubtedly repay tenfold. Chapter 9, Deliberate Avoidance. 1. In her stupor, Sue Cloud leaned over and nudged her, inquiring, "Fourth sister, what occupies your thoughts?" Despite the smile adorning her face, the sorrow in her eyes did not escape Sue Caution's notice. Internally, Sue Caution scoffed. While Sue Cloud possessed some petty schemes and excelled at feigning innocence, she remained quite immature. This fifth sister was likely disheartened by her inability to converse with Consort Chow. Casting a glance at the smiling Madame and Sue Harmony, her beautiful eyes swept over them as she remarked, "Nothing, I was merely contemplating that in the future, we may have to refer to the third or fifth prince as second brother-in-law." How could that be? Sue Cloud abruptly stood, and just as she was about to express her anger, the astonished gazes of those around her compelled her to suppress her ire. She forced a smile, lowered her head, and slowly resumed her seat, fixing a serious gaze on Sue Caution as she cautioned, "This matter remains unresolved, sister, refrain from speaking carelessly. If it becomes known, it could tarnish the reputations of our two elder sisters." "What do you mean, fifth sister?" "This is merely a topic of conversation. How could it possibly harm the reputations of eldest sister and second sister?" Sue Caution replied with a smile. "We can discuss this privately, do not disclose it to anyone." Observing Sue Caution nodding vigorously, Sue Cloud hesitated for a moment before gritting her teeth and asking, "Why do you think that way?" Secretly gesturing toward the first Madame and Sue Harmony, who were seated beside Consort Chow with expressions of delight, she leaned closer to Sue Cloud and whispered, "Notice how close the first Madame and Consort Chow are, and second sister is also renowned as a beauty in the capital, second only to eldest sister." Sue Cloud's expression immediately darkened. With such beauties as wives, the third and fifth princes must be exceedingly pleased. Sue Caution appeared oblivious to Sue Cloud's demeanor, continuing to smile as she inquired, "Do you agree, fifth sister?" Sue Cloud replied absently, unconsciously prodding the steamed fish dish before her with her chopsticks, her gaze fixed gloomily on the Madam and Sue Harmony. Sue Caution noted the change in Sue Cloud's expression, the corners of her mouth curling into a faint smile. Despite the lavish spread before her, the presence of Consort Zhao and Blue Wind diminished Sue Caution's appetite. She hastily consumed a few bites of rice before excusing herself from the flower hall, citing a headache. Accompanied by Grace Child, Sue Caution strolled back slowly. At this juncture, the banquet had yet to conclude, and she encountered few individuals along the way. Since her rebirth, Sue Caution's behavior had been peculiar. Although Grace Child harbored suspicions, she refrained from questioning, quietly trailing behind her. Suddenly, Sue Caution halted. Laughter echoed from a nearby corner, where a young man clad in floral attire, handsome and refined, accompanied by a slender young man with fair skin, was surrounded by a group of servants as they approached. "Miss, it's the second young master." Grace Child's voice called from behind. Sue Caution swiftly turned, grasped Grace Child's arm, and sidestepped, the two figures quickly vanishing into the flower bushes. "Miss?" Grace Child crouched beside Sue Caution, her face a mask of confusion, unable to comprehend why her young lady was evading the second young master. "Shoo!" Sue Caution urged Grace Child to be silent, peering through the gap in the flowers. The young man drew nearer, his handsome visage now clearly visible to Sue Caution. A sudden pang of longing struck her heart as she gazed at that familiar face. The newcomer was Blue Wind. It must be acknowledged that her husband from her previous life possessed striking good looks, with thick eyebrows and a prominent nose. Although he was not the emperor's favored prince, he was undeniably refined and elegant, enough to captivate all the young women in the capital. Just as they approached Sue Caution's hiding place, several maids encircled a young woman walking from their left. The young woman moved gracefully, each step creating an elegant arc, her garments fluttering in the breeze, accentuating her figure. "Miss, it's the fifth young lady," Grace Child whispered in Sue Caution's ear. Sue Caution remained silent, her gaze fixed on them. She recognized Sue Cloud and understood that, given Sue Cloud's disposition, she would not easily relinquish this marriage. In her previous life, Sue Cloud had invested considerable effort in Blue Wind. Had it not been for Consort Zhao's desire to find a bride who was easily manipulated, how could this seemingly grand marriage have fallen into her lap? Chapter 10, Deliberate Avoidance. 2. The well-intentioned suggestion at the dinner table ignited Sue Cloud's desire to forge her own path. Encountering a talented man and a beautiful woman in the flower garden, despite Sue Eternal's presence, proved to be a delightful experience. As Sue Cloud approached the pair, she beamed and gracefully walked toward Sue Eternal, the second young master of the Shu family. Her gaze flowed past Blue Wind like a gentle stream as she inquired, "Second brother, who is this?" Her voice, clear and melodious with a hint of sweetness, was enough to capture any man's attention. "This is the third prince," Sue Eternal replied with a smile, turning to introduce Blue Wind. "Third prince, this is my fifth sister." "Little girl Sue Cloud greets the third prince," she said, bowing her head slightly in a shy gesture that was utterly enchanting. "Fifth young lady, I wish you well," Blue Wind responded, admiring Sue Cloud's graceful form. The gentle timbre of his voice and his striking appearance made Sue Cloud's eyes sparkle. "Second brother, the banquet is still ongoing, why the rush to escort the guests away? Are you eager for the third prince to see your new painting?" Sue Cloud teased playfully. It was merely a moment of inspiration," Sue Eternal replied, a slight blush creeping onto his cheeks as he sheepishly scratched his head. "Fifth young lady, please don't hold it against me. At the banquet, Brother Shu and I enjoyed a delightful conversation, and I learned he has a new work, so I persuaded him to show it to me." Blue Wind smiled in response. "If the third prince is so interested, I shall have someone prepare cakes and tea, allowing you and second brother to converse freely," Sue Cloud offered graciously. "Thank you, fifth young lady," Blue Wind acknowledged with a nod. The fifth young lady of the Shu family possessed a dignified and graceful presence, truly a rare beauty. My fifth sister is quite perceptive, second brother appreciates your thoughtfulness, Su Eternal remarked with a smile. Su Cloud inclined her head slightly, then turned, her slender waist twisting as she walked away. Blue Wind observed her elegant figure for a moment before redirecting his gaze, departing with Su Eternal amidst laughter and conversation. Let us proceed. Once they were out of earshot, Su Caution rose and calmly addressed Grace Child beside her. Miss, why are you avoiding the second young master? Grace Child inquired, puzzled. Although the fourth young lady had never been particularly close to her siblings, she had never behaved in such a manner before. Moreover, the third prince accompanying the second young master is quite handsome, you should greet him, if possible. Grace Child murmured, Miss, look at how the fifth young lady presents herself. Su Caution inhaled deeply, turned, and playfully tapped Grace Child's forehead, smiling as she said, could it be that my Grace Child has fallen for the third prince's good looks? If so, I shall inform Madam to cancel your engagement with Su Fourth and send you to Fifth Sister, so she can take you along with me. How does that sound? Grace Child immediately flushed, stamping her foot in protest. Miss, what are you saying? Why would I have such thoughts? I am wholeheartedly devoted to Brother Su and you, Mississippi. Oh, I was merely jesting, look at how anxious you are, Su Caution replied with a smile, noticing Grace Child's concern. Turning her gaze toward the direction where Blue Wind had vanished, a cold glimmer flickered in her eyes. Su Caution waved her hand and said, Grace Child, let us return. Observing Blue Wind's earlier demeanor, it was evident he was captivated by Su Cloud, and she wished to sever any further entanglements with him in this lifetime. With this thought, Su Caution exhaled in relief, her steps becoming lighter and more leisurely. Jingyuan, where Su Caution resided, was situated in the northwest corner of Shu Prefecture, a secluded area known for its tranquility, hence its name, and rarely frequented by passers-by. Lying on her bed, Su Caution heard distant sounds of laughter, musical instruments, and opera singing, which lulled her into a peaceful slumber. Upon awakening, she found it was already dark, and dinner had long since passed. Grace Child, noticing Su Caution was awake, hurriedly prepared her meal and said, at Shan hour, Hong Yen from the Grand Madam's side visited. I saw that the young lady was sleeping soundly, so I informed her that your head wound had flared up again a few days ago, and you had only rested briefly. Hong Yen said nothing in response and departed. Understood, Su Caution replied with a nod. As Grace Child set the table, she hesitated before speaking softly, Miss, a few days ago you purchased fine fabric and embroidery thread to prepare a gift for the old lady, spending quite a bit of money, now it's nearly all gone. There are still a few days until the monthly payment, conserve whatever you can moving forward, Su Caution advised, taking a light bite of her food. Yes. Grace Child sighed softly in response. Living in this expansive mansion, it was essential to be filial to elders, cultivate relationships with siblings, and care for the servants. That monthly salary was insufficient. If she wished to leave the Shu mansion, she needed to devise a plan to secure her future. With this in mind, she realized she must find a way to escape the confines of the mansion. Chapter 11, The Observer and the Divider, 1. It was not until the morning of the third day that Su Caution visited Plum Garden to see the elderly woman. She explained that on her grandmother's birthday, she had been unwell and unable to attend to her, which left her feeling quite troubled. Consequently, she wished to go to Spirit Temple to pray for her grandmother, demonstrating her filial piety. Spirit Temple is situated on Spirit Mountain, south of the capital, where the burning of incense is particularly prevalent. The elderly woman was a devoted Buddhist and even requested the Prime Minister to construct a temple for her daily worship. Although she held a disfavor towards Su Caution, she found her words quite agreeable, prompting her to nod in assent. Although customs are now more liberal than during the previous dynasty, families that consider themselves noble and prestigious, such as the Shu family, continue to adhere strictly to the traditions of that era. The young women in the family receive rigorous instruction and seldom venture out on ordinary days. When they do go out, they are required to be accompanied by a retinue of servants and maids. In the Thursday family, Sue Caution stood out as an exception. She had never received respect within the household. On a typical day, apart from Grace Child, the personal maid, there were merely 2 core servants responsible for the laborious tasks. On this occasion, when she ventured out, it appeared that the entire Shu family had neglected to send additional servants to attend to her at Spirit Temple. She felt quite pleased. Without a retinue trailing her, her movements were naturally much more liberated. After greeting the elderly woman, Sue Caution escorted Grace Child outside. As soon as the two arrived at the door, the carriage appeared. The driver was Grace Child's fiancé, Sue Forth. He was known for his honesty, loyalty, and trustworthiness. The street was bustling with activity. Lifting the curtain of the carriage revealed numerous women and young ladies passing by, engaged in lively conversation and laughter. Until now, she had consistently longed for the carefree days of her childhood. However, since marrying Blue Wind, she had scarcely ventured beyond the palace gates, relegated to that confined space. Grandma frequently remarked that she possessed the blood of a woman of unknown origin, and that she appeared restless at first glance. This observation held a kernel of truth. In her previous life, despite her efforts to suppress her yearning for the world beyond those imposing walls, she found it impossible to conform to the expectations of the women in the mansion, who were content to do so. Taking a deep breath, Sue Caution narrowed her eyes slightly. In her former life, she had consistently restrained herself, endured injustice, and pursued perfection. What had she ultimately gained? Merely the word death. She had endured fighting, harm, and betrayal, suffering enough. In this life, she was determined not to repeat the same mistakes. She sought someone who understood her, loved her, and would share a simple life with her until old age. The carriage came to a halt at the base of Spirit Temple. Sue Caution alighted from the carriage, followed closely by Grace Child and Sue Forth, who carried their luggage. After ascending the lengthy staircase and offering incense while praying, Sue Caution exited the temple and proceeded toward the rear of the mountain. Behind Spirit Mountain lies a maple forest, and with autumn upon us, the maple leaves are a vibrant red. Sending Grace Child away, Sue Caution transported her luggage into the woods. She faintly recalled someone mentioning a drunken thug who had fallen in this forest and sought to unearth the rock that had caused his stumble to express his frustration. To his surprise, he unearthed a pot of gold and became wealthy. But where precisely? Sue Caution rubbed her head in exasperation. The forest was modest in size. Sue Caution wandered through it until she halted before a tree on the verge of toppling. After a moment of contemplation and a careful survey of her surroundings, she confirmed that no one was present. Gritting her teeth, she resolutely declared, "Let's take a risk." Disregarding the potential for soiling her silk garments, Sue Caution crouched on the ground, retrieved a piece of cloth from her sleeve, unwrapped the scissors contained within, and targeted the conspicuously elevated soil surrounding the stone, proceeding to excavate it. Not long after, Sue Caution shifted the unstable rock, revealing a pitch-black jar before her. The jar was not large, roughly the size of her 2 clenched fists. Containing her excitement, Sue Caution swiftly unearthed the jar, removed the lid, and instantly, brilliant golden rays of light flooded her vision. Excitedly unwrapping the cloth, Sue Caution extracted the pastry cloth, meticulously rewrapped the gold leaves, returned the jar and stones to their original position, concealed the bag of gold leaves in her sleeve, and swiftly rose to her feet. Money, she finally possessed money. A radiant smile blossomed on Sue Caution's face. Sue Caution cautiously glanced left and right, ensured that no one was present, swiftly brushed the dust from her body, restrained her excitement, and promptly exited. Chapter 12, The Man Who Perceived a Division in Two, Huh? How did you know that gold was concealed beneath that rock? A voice unexpectedly emerged from behind Sue Caution. Someone, why is there someone? She has clearly just verified. Su Caution was taken aback, her eyebrows slightly knitted together, her right hand firmly clutching the gold concealed within her left sleeve. While this quantity of gold held little significance for the affluent, for Su Caution, who depended on the Thursday family for her sustenance, clothing, and shelter, it was of immense value. Su Caution composed herself, gradually turning her head to face the speaker, her eyes brimming with wariness. Only to find White Cloud comfortably seated cross-legged on a tree branch, his handsome visage adorned with a subtle smile, the corners of his mouth gently lifted, and his captivating eyes brimming with curiosity. Approximately 17 or 18 years of age, adorned in an opulent white brocade robe that drapes over a tall and attractive physique, characterized by broad shoulders and a slender waist, reminiscent of vibrant green pine and bamboo. Encircling his waist was a white jade belt, featuring a black gem at its center. A black dot on a white background is not only perfectly in place but also embodies a sense of harmony. Gazing at the black gem, Su Caution appeared to perceive the sinister essence of this man, moreover, it was not of the ordinary sort. Frowning slightly, Su Caution's gaze finally settled on his face, which was strikingly handsome and exquisite to the point of being impeccable. Beautiful as jade, with thick, elegant eyebrows, a high, straight nose, and lovely lips, his fair face boasted clear angles as if sculpted by a master artisan, reminiscent of poetry or painting. However, the most captivating aspect was not his facial features, but the overall demeanor that he exuded. It is a beauty that emanates from the core, noble and elegant, graceful and untroubled, yet intertwined with tranquility and introspection, deep and profound. His entire being, from the inside out, radiated an unmatched allure. His five senses paled in comparison to this captivating presence. Regardless of the perspective from which one observes, he is an extraordinarily handsome and refined young man. But she noticed a dark spot behind him, resembling the black gem on his belt. Even beneath the radiant midday sun, she remained impervious to any warmth. Su Caution assessed the man thoroughly, scrutinizing him from head to toe and even examining him from the inside out and outside in several times. Her eyebrows knitted together slightly more as she sensed a familiar feeling resonating within him. "I'm curious, how do you know there is gold down there?" White Cloud took a measured step closer, his warm breath brushing against Su Caution's face. I retrieved it." Su Caution had never anticipated that someone would abruptly descend from the sky, so she tightened her sleeves, striving to maintain a calm and gentle tone. "Oh. Is that so?" White Cloud gazed at Su Caution with a subtly tense expression, smiling with significance. "Ha! It appears he is fortunate today, receiving yet another stroke of luck." "Yes," Su Caution affirmed with enthusiasm. "A few days ago, I had just completed burning incense and was preparing to rest for a while when I noticed someone lurking around here. It appeared they were burying something. Just now, upon my arrival, that scene suddenly came to mind, and out of curiosity, I chose to excavate it and take a look, but unexpectedly, White Cloud listened intently and eventually nodded. "You excavated haphazardly and discovered an entire pot of gold. Your fortune truly evokes my envy. If you prefer not to disclose the truth, I shall not compel you, but," he paused and extended his hand. "Hand it over." Su Caution's heart instantly tightened, she instinctively drew her left sleeve into her arms and regarded White Cloud with suspicion. "What?" White Cloud chuckled, gesturing toward the sleeve that Su Caution was concealing. This is what I unearthed, I present it to you." Su Caution tightened her grip on her sleeve, her expression somewhat displeasing. "We met and divided into two. Since I witnessed it, how can I not have a share? Little girl, do not even consider consuming it all by yourself." White Cloud touched her nose and said languidly. Finally, his gaze settled on Su Caution, scrutinizing her from top to bottom. Was this truly the second daughter of the Prime Minister's residence? The one rumored to be a fragile and easily victimized trash, the fourth young lady, Su Caution. The physique appears somewhat slender, the complexion exhibits a slight yellowish hue, the chest is relatively modest, the expression seems somewhat aloof, and the heart carries a hint of darkness. Feeling the weight of his gaze, Su Caution turned to the man before her and icily remarked, "Have you seen enough?" White Cloud was taken aback as his jet-black eyes locked onto Su Caution's even darker gaze. He inhaled sharply, the contrast was striking. His intuition informed him that this woman was far more than merely intriguing. Noticing Su Caution's cold and somber gaze, White Cloud instinctively raised his hand to touch his chest. His heart continued to pound, fortunately, it was still there. "Humph, what if I refuse?" Su Caution's petite face slowly darkened, her eyes as frigid as a December winter, fixed intently on White Cloud. White Cloud leaned closer to Su Caution, gently lifting her small chin with his hand. Everyone claims that the fourth young lady of the Prime Minister's residence is timid and possesses a stubborn disposition. However, having met her today, I find her to be quite different. Does he know her identity? As he lifted his head to unveil the astonishment in Su Caution's eyes, he maintained his grip on her chin, and White Cloud's smile radiated even more brightly. "This human skin mask appears to be of high quality, but after prolonged use, do not lose sight of your true self." "Brother, who are you, precisely?" Su Caution's large black and white eyes scrutinized White Cloud, brimming with vigilance and defiance, her small face slightly ashen. At that moment, Grace Child's voice echoed from a distance, Miss, where are you?" The distance between them was merely an inch, his lips brushed against her ear as he spoke softly, "I harbor no ill intentions, I merely wish to witness Grace Child's true form." White Cloud's eyes were as clear as water, and a subtle herbal fragrance lingered around him. Su Caution's body quivered slightly, her eyelashes lowered to conceal the emotions in her eyes, her pearly teeth pressed against her lips, resolutely refusing to speak. Just joking, I'll take half of this gold." White Cloud released her chin and turned to depart. His sleeves billowed, devoid of any lingering hesitation. Su Caution gazed in the direction where White Cloud had vanished, and it took her some time to regain her composure. Miss, there you are. I have been searching for you for quite some time." Grace Child's cheerful voice resonated from behind. Su Caution's expression was one of discontent as she exhaled deeply and remarked in exasperation, "What is the purpose? This place is so confined, where can I possibly go?" After stating that, she regained her composure and exited. Seated in the carriage, Su Caution placed her right hand into her left sleeve and delicately caressed the thin gold leaves that had evidently dulled within the silk bag, her expression melancholic. It was not until their return to the Prime Minister's residence that a smile graced Su Caution's face. She had gone out to pray for her grandmother, so naturally, she had to return with joy, did she not? Chapter 13, Anticipating rain. Upon entering Plum Garden, he observed the maids of the first and second madam positioned in the yard. "What brings them all here at this moment?" Grace Child took several swift steps, raised the curtain, and Su Caution entered the room. Su Caution inclined her head slightly, her expression neutral, her tone devoid of emotion. "Grandma, your granddaughter has returned. You're back, please take a seat and rest." The elderly woman nodded slightly and replied, "Thank you, Grandma." Su Caution inclined her head slightly and dutifully took a seat beside the second lady. "This girl is reserved and speaks little, yet she is a devoted child. She visited Spirit Pagoda early this morning to pray for me." The elderly woman turned her head and gazed at everyone below with a warm smile. A few days ago was Mother's birthday, and the fourth maid was unwell and unable to serve by her side, which has left me feeling guilty. Yesterday, she recovered, so I asked her to represent her siblings today in praying for Mother's blessings to demonstrate her filial piety, the First Lady remarked with a smile. Su Caution harbored a sneer within. With merely a few words from her, her accomplishments were transformed into the shared successes of her siblings. Spirit Pagoda has consistently thrived amidst the fragrant incense. The Bodhisattva perceives the filial devotion of his descendants and will undoubtedly bestow blessings of good health upon the mother, the second wife remarked with a smile. Certainly. The first lady concurred, turning her gaze toward Su Caution and inquired, I have heard that the prophecy at Spirit Pagoda is remarkably effective. I wonder if the fourth lady has sought a prophecy. Yes, sir. Su Caution lowered her head and spoke in a soft tone. Oh. What thunder? Inquired the people. Su Caution murmured, Thunder. Thunder. The elderly woman exclaimed with delight, clutching the armrests of her chair as she implored, Please, tell me, what is the prophecy? Seemingly unaccustomed to the gaze of so many onlookers, Su Caution turned her body slightly, a hint of shyness evident on her face. She lowered her head and gradually stood up, approaching the elderly woman. Raising her hands, she stated, My naive granddaughter, all I can recall is this phrase, all things are pure and vibrant, and all things unfold as intended, thanks to the saints and sages. This is truly a rare blessing, congratulations, Mother. Bodhisattva will undoubtedly bestow upon Mother good health and success in all future endeavors. The First Lady and the Second Lady exchanged smiles and nodded in agreement. The elderly woman is indeed fortunate. This is the Bodhisattva, utilizing the words of the fourth young lady to convey to the elderly woman that everything will undoubtedly proceed as intended in the future, remarked the fourth lady. Excellent, excellent, excellent. The elderly woman expressed her joy, repeatedly uttering the word excellent, our fourth son is indeed fortunate. This is all due to the Bodhisattva's affection for grandmother, which granddaughter would dare to claim credit? Su Caution lowered her head, the corners of her mouth slightly lifted, and spoke in a subdued tone. Her grandmother had always held a belief in Buddha, and she had only modestly indulged her by borrowing a few auspicious phrases from the Bodhisattva, which had already secured her approval. Fourth young lady, you have been busy all day, you must be fatigued. Please return and rest. The elderly woman glanced at Grace Child, who stood at the door, and remarked, You have only one maidservant, which is insufficient. I will instruct your mother to send a capable maidservant along with a few sturdy servants to your courtyard later. It was entirely due to my daughter-in-law's negligence that fourth lady has suffered. The first madam was taken aback, then smiled and replied, Mother, you need not worry, your daughter-in-law will certainly make the necessary arrangements. The second lady's expression hardened, her lips moved several times, yet she remained silent. Thank you, grandmother. Su Caution rose and saluted, her expression brimming with joy and gratitude. Can Huyn thank mother? Very well, return and rest, come early tomorrow morning to share breakfast with this elderly woman. The elderly woman waved her hand, speaking in an unusually gentle tone. Wow! Su Caution was taken aback, a spark of excitement illuminated her face, and her eyes quickly filled with tears. The elderly woman observed Su Caution's expression, her gaze softening further as she remarked, Return home and rest early. Yes, Su Caution acknowledged, turned, and exited. The moment she exited the room, she swiftly retrieved a handkerchief from her bosom and delicately wiped the corners of her eyes, leaving everyone inside with a tear-stained visage. As soon as Grace Child exited the plum garden, she could hardly contain her elation. She followed Su Caution and exclaimed, Miss, this is wonderful. The old lady finally understands that you are well. This is wonderful, this is wonderful. Grace Child murmured, then abruptly paused, clasped her hands, lifted her gaze to the sky, and exclaimed with a look of innocence, Thank God for your protection, our young lady can finally hold her head high. Thank God. Su Caution felt a warmth in her heart. Within the entire Prime Minister's mansion, perhaps only Grace Child was truly devoted to her. Observing Grace Child's innocent visage, she smiled and remarked, Look at how joyful you are, others might assume that your Su Fourth is about to marry you. Miss, you are teasing me once more. Grace Child blushed, stamped her feet, and remarked playfully. Come on, let us return home. I have been running around all day, and I am fatigued, Su Caution remarked. Yes, miss, please return and rest. Grace Child nodded, dutifully following Su Caution. Grace Child's cheerful voice resonated beside her ear. The third prince is quite dashing. Miss, you must seize this opportunity. Miss, the old lady found it quite challenging to hold a different perspective of you. You must persist in your efforts moving forward. Excuse me, did you hear what Grace Child mentioned? Heard it, heard it. Chapter 14, Anticipating Rain, 2. Upon returning to the room, Su Caution requested that Grace Child depart, and subsequently, silence enveloped her ears. Removing the gold from her sleeve, Su Caution delicately stroked it. Despite the fact that half of it was missing, it remained a considerable sum. This quantity of gold, valued at 200 taels of silver, allows her to establish a shop or acquire several acres of rice fields. Contemplating this, a radiant smile graced Su Caution's face, and her entire being felt buoyant. After a brief pause, Su Caution shook her head, dispelling her illusions. At that moment, Grace Child's voice resonated from outside the door. Miss, the First Madam's representatives have arrived. Here. Already? Su Caution was taken aback. She swiftly wrapped the gold leaves and concealed them beneath the bed, adjusted her attire, and then softly called, "Let them in." Yes. In her former life, she was encircled by servants as she prepared to marry Blue Wind. Grace Child had also wed, approximately a year prior. Will Rain Love still be by her side? As she was immersed in contemplation, a girl of approximately 12 or 13 years, a woman in her 30s, and two robust elderly ladies entered. The girl inclined her head slightly, her waist exhibiting a gentle curve, her demeanor respectful and humble. Although a year had passed, in comparison to their initial encounter in a previous life, she appeared considerably more immature. Nonetheless, she instantly recognized Rain Love. It appears that regardless of her transformations, certain individuals and circumstances remain immutable. Several individuals approached her and knelt, offering their salutations one by one. The middle-aged woman, whose surname was Peng, was employed at the entrance of the general's mansion. The Peng family had traditionally engaged in laborious tasks in the backyard. Although Su Caution was not particularly favored, she remained a dignified mistress nonetheless. Serving alongside her master was a significant improvement compared to her previous role in the backyard. Observing Su Caution, her expression radiated unrestrained joy. Rain Love's head was slightly lowered, yet she ensured that Su Caution could distinctly perceive the respect and humility reflected in her expression. Su Caution grasped the teacup, took a sip, and nonchalantly issued a few directives to dismiss the others, retaining only Rain Love. Rain Love, infused with a sense of tension and excitement, furtively glanced at Su Caution, only to be met by her icy stare, which caused her to start in surprise. Su Caution clenched her fists, gazing at her intently, as if striving to perceive her essence from within. Reflecting on the past, Rain Love consistently exhibited respect and humility. Whenever assigned a task, she executed it efficiently and thoroughly, from start to finish, without uttering a single word of complaint. Thus, she esteemed her, positioned her by her side, and facilitated her marriage into the royal palace. Her mother suffered a fall and fractured her leg, prompting her to utilize her limited funds to secure medical attention for her mother. Her younger brother lacked sufficient funds to attend school, prompting her to utilize her dowry to support his education. She placed immense trust in her, yet ultimately, her words, "This servant observes that you venture out every night, and each time you are accompanied by the guard piece," propelled her into the depths of despair. Su Caution stifled the hatred swelling within her heart, averted her gaze, and allowed her mind to gradually regain composure. She looked at Rain Love, who remained kneeling on the ground, and inquired with a hint of confusion, "What is your name?" "This servant's name is Rain Love." Rain Love lowered her head to the ground and responded with care, "This servant entered the general's mansion at the end of last year and has been tending to the garden." Su Caution remained silent, merely gazing at the teacup that swirled gently in her hand. After a moment, Rain Love felt a profound sense of unease. She shifted slightly, lifted her gaze, met Su Caution's eyes, and quickly lowered her head, stating, "I am the servant, my name is Rain Love." After a moment, sensing Rain Love's profound discomfort, Su Caution set down her teacup and sighed gently, "Rise." "Yes." Rain Love exhaled in relief and gradually rose to her feet. "This is my personal maid, Grace Child. You will heed her from this moment forward," Su Caution stated coldly, gesturing toward Grace Child, who stood beside her. "Indeed." Rain Love acknowledged, then turned and offered a slight bow to Grace Child, "Sister Grace Child." "Please step back," Su Caution instructed, waving her hand. "Yes." The two representatives of Eastern Purity responded, promptly withdrawing outside. After listening to the footsteps of the two individuals fade away, Su Caution retrieved the gold leaf from beneath the bed. She opened the wardrobe and found a small locked chest on the bottom shelf. Carefully, she unlocked it and placed the gold leaf inside. Su Caution delicately touched the chest, thoughtfully returning it to its original position. The chest held her mother's relics. Grace Child served as her personal maid. In this room, it could be asserted that, aside from the contents of this chest, she was intimately familiar with every detail. Since the passing of her mother, Su Caution allocated funds to commission a chest that would encompass all of her mother's cherished belongings from her lifetime. It was the sole source of warmth for her in the cold confines of the Prime Minister's mansion. Once everything was resolved, Su Caution's demeanor relaxed. With these 200 taels, her future could be regarded as having a fundamental assurance. Chapter 15, Reuniting with an old friend today, the sunlight is exquisite, making it an ideal day to venture outdoors. Early in the morning, Su Caution made preparations and escorted Grace Child to take a seat in Su Forth's carriage for their outing. While the Prime Minister's family maintains a strict educational environment, the daughters are generally prohibited from going out on regular days. However, each month, upon receiving permission from the elders, they are allowed to venture out for one day to unwind. Ket echoed as the carriage came to a halt at North Market, the largest market in the capital. It offers a diverse array of cosmetics, silk, and brocade, making it a favored destination for young ladies. Miss, it has arrived, it has arrived." Grace Child exclaimed with enthusiasm. "I know, look how happy you are." Observing Grace Child's joyful expression, Su Caution smiled and remarked, "Indeed, I've heard that the dumpling shop across from you Ran Lu serves delectable dumplings. Please buy me some while I take a stroll around here." "Yes." Grace Child nodded, raised the curtain, leaped from the carriage, and her vibrant silhouette vanished into the throng in an instant. Grace Child departed, and Su Caution gently lifted the curtain, saying softly, "Su Forth." Observing Su Forth turn around, Su Caution discreetly placed the piece of cloth wrapped in gold leaves into Su Forth's hand and remarked, "Here are some gold leaves, quickly store them away." Su Forth gazed at the piece of cloth in his hand, his eyes wide with astonishment. Before he could ponder why Su Caution would bestow upon him such a substantial sum, he heard her gentle voice, "This quantity of gold leaves is approximately 80 taels of silver. Use this to repurchase Shengji Shu Zhai located in the center of Hibiscus Street." Su Forth regarded Su Caution with suspicion, and after a prolonged moment, he regained his composure and murmured, "Miss, what if that bookkeeper is unwilling to sell? Furthermore, the shop on Hibiscus Street is not particularly favorable. Simply follow my instructions, the owner of Trin Kai Thursday Tray will undoubtedly acquiesce." Su Caution instructed with composure, "Once we acquire the store, we will sell pens, ink, paper, and inkstones. Subsequently, entrust the management to your third uncle, who recently departed from the capital. I recall that he previously served as the shopkeeper." Su Forth stared at Su Caution in bewilderment. His third uncle had returned for less than 3 days, how could the young lady possibly know? Moreover, Since the young lady had never met his third uncle, how could she be aware that he had once been a shopkeeper and would feel confident in trusting the management of the business to him? Su Caution disregarded Su Fourth, who appeared dazed, as she disembarked from the carriage and instructed, "Follow my directions, and once you have completed the task, inform me." After a brief pause, she added, "Keep my name confidential, do not mention it to anyone, not even Grace Child." Her voice was not loud, yet it was powerful and dignified. Su Fourth heard this and promptly responded, tucking the yellow leaf away. Walking slowly down the street, a faint smile graced Su Caution's face. The shops on Hibiscus Street were not merely unremarkable, they were renowned for their lackluster business within the North Market. Situated on the periphery of the North Market, Hibiscus Street had originally served as a hub for small traders. Despite the market's relocation, foot traffic remained sparse on ordinary days. Establishing a shop there, let alone turning a profit, was considered a significant achievement if one could merely avoid incurring losses. However, she recalled that last September, during this same month, a wealthy merchant had acquired a tea house on Hibiscus Street in the capital. He invested a substantial amount to renovate it thoroughly, achieving a level of luxury that could be deemed the finest tea house in the capital. Consequently, Hibiscus Street became the most prominent location in the North Market, bustling with activity and thriving business. The Zhengji bookstore was situated directly across from the tea house. It was rumored that the bookstore owner sold the property for 80 taels of silver, a decision he deeply regretted. There were days when he stood in front of the store, lost in thought, lamenting his choice. At that moment, Grace Child's voice echoed from a distance, Miss, here are the buns." Su Caution smiled and approached him gracefully. The shop was already organized, allowing her to relish her free time today. Noticing that the young lady appeared to be relaxed, Grace Child became more animated. "Young lady, it's still early, why don't we take a walk before returning?" Su Caution observed the individuals traversing the main road, accompanied by the vendors incessantly hawking their goods. She nodded, her voice soft and agreeable, "Okay." Grace Child was filled with excitement as she accompanied her young lady, seldom leaving the mansion. At just 12 years old, she was naturally captivated by the vibrant market outside. However, after wandering for a while, she realized that her young lady appeared to lack enthusiasm, finding everything she encountered rather dull. "Miss, are you not excited?" Grace Child was inquisitive about everything, glancing left and right. Su Caution smiled and turned to Grace Child, saying, "It's not that I'm not excited, I simply do not express it outwardly. As for you, Grace Child, you appear to be a country girl who has just arrived in the city." Miss Grace Child displayed a sense of entitlement towards her young lady. After all, she had previously served as a maid in the Prime Minister's residence. How could she possibly be considered a country girl? She sighed. Who dictated that the Prime Minister's residence should be so stringent? Typically, maids in her position were not permitted to venture outside. "Very well, let us stroll a bit longer before purchasing some daily necessities and returning home." Su Caution observed Grace Child's woeful demeanor and smiled gently. Her eyes inadvertently drifted, and she lifted her head to see someone seated by the window of the tea shop across the street. Simultaneously, the young man also raised his head, gazing in her direction. His eyes radiated a clear and tranquil light reminiscent of moonlight, while a chill emanated from the depths of his being, creating a barrier between him and the world. The brilliance of his gaze was so intense that it was nearly unbearable to look directly at him. The blue hem of his robes featured intricately embroidered silver patterns that gracefully curved, showcasing exquisite craftsmanship. His eyes, pale and frigid, possessed an elegance akin to water, exuding a sense of indifference as they turned toward Su Caution. Is it him? She did not anticipate encountering Blue Scenic City, the present second prince, on the street. Su Caution smiled involuntarily, she had not anticipated it would be him, Blue Scenic City. Ah, he is the arch-nemesis of Blue Wind, the two have clashed innumerable times without a definitive victor. Su Caution reflected on her past life, recalling that person's cold, emotionless gaze, causing the corners of her mouth to involuntarily curve upward. At this moment, the second prince must have just returned from his studies abroad, suggesting that the capital is on the brink of upheaval once more. She gradually averted her gaze, contemplating the prospect of reuniting with familiar individuals. They existed in the light, while she remained enveloped in darkness. This sensation was truly intriguing. That year, the Empress of the Blue Kingdom, Eternal Righteousness, had been discreetly consolidating power within the court. Although the emperor feigned ignorance of her machinations, he had long harbored suspicions about her intentions. Over the years, she had orchestrated the infusion of musk with a similar fragrance into the Baiyun incense she burned daily in the palace, resulting in her inability to bear children and provide the emperor with a crown prince. The emperor had fathered the second prince of Blue Scenic City with imperial concubine Lan, the third prince of Blue Wind, who lost his mother at a young age and was raised by consort Zhao, the fifth prince of Michael Wind, also born to consort Zhao, along with several other princes and princesses from different concubines. However, the emperor, still in his prime, had yet to designate a crown prince. In his former life, the fifth prince was frequently rumored to possess a frail constitution and suffer from persistent ailments, truly a walking medicine cabinet. However, few could have anticipated that this delicate facade was merely a ruse to mislead the world. The fifth prince had gone so far as to ensure that no water would leak out, successfully deceiving even his own mother. Who could have imagined that beneath that gentle and innocuous exterior lay an ambitious spirit? Contemplating the future scenario in which the princes vie for the throne in a deadly contest, Su Caution shook her head and offered a faint smile before taking Grace Child's hand and proceeding onward. Although her appearance was not striking, she possessed fair skin, bright eyes, and even teeth, particularly her clear black and white eyes, complemented by a radiant demeanor. That subtle smile sent ripples through his heart. Blue Scenic City observed the small figure vanish, as if lost in thought. Chapter 16 Kindness Without Expectation. 1. Time passes swiftly. In the blink of an eye, it was already the end of May. Su Caution's establishment, Han Silent Pavilion, had opened its doors half a month prior, with Su Forth's third uncle serving as the shopkeeper. Meanwhile, the White Feather Tower, which would soon be recognized as the premier building in the capital, was nearing the completion of its decoration. It was anticipated that Hibiscus Street would soon emerge as the most vibrant area in North City. On a warm and sunny noon reminiscent of spring, Su Caution reclined on the imperial concubine's chair in the courtyard, drifting in and out of sleep. Grace Child stood quietly beside her, occasionally smoothing the edge of her blanket. Fifth Miss has arrived, she announced as footsteps approached. Rain Love approached respectfully and spoke. Su Cloud. What brings her here? Su Caution slowly opened her eyes. Look, fourth sister lives so comfortably, I truly envy her, a clear voice chimed. Su Caution sat up, turned toward the voice, and beheld a young woman clad in a peach-red cross-collar shirt and a white pleated long skirt, her face adorned with a smile. Fifth sister truly knows how to jest, I merely live day by day. How could my life be as vibrant as yours? Su Caution replied with a chuckle. Vibrant? I'm just an idle person. Fourth sister, your flattery grows more charming by the day, no wonder grandmother has been mentioning you so often lately, Su Cloud laughed. An idle person? Idleness is indeed quite comfortable. Today she visited the old lady, tomorrow she would indulge the first lady, and now she was here in her modest courtyard. In this prime minister's residence, it seemed no one was more idle than her. Su Caution secretly scoffed but maintained a smile, asking, Fifth sister, is there something amiss? If there's nothing wrong, can't I simply come to visit? Su Cloud replied with a radiant smile, her beauty striking. Little sister certainly knows how to jest, Su Caution said as she moved to the table in the center of the courtyard and took a seat. It is an honor to host a beauty such as yourself. Big sister is teasing again, Su Cloud said as she settled beside Su Caution. After a brief pause, she continued, Consort Zhao's younger sister, Madame Lu, sent someone to invite us today, asking the three of us sisters to visit the Lu residence tomorrow. I thought it had been a while since I saw Big Sister, so I came to inform you personally. Madame Lu invited us. For what reason? Su Caution inquired, her expression skeptical. It seems her granddaughter from the capital has arrived. What's her name? Mu. Mu, Su Cloud mused, resting her chin on her hand. Elegant jade. Su Caution exclaimed, momentarily taken aback, then spoke calmly. Yes, yes. It's elegant jade, Su Cloud replied, clapping her hands as if a realization had struck her. Fourth sister may not leave the house, but the news travels quickly. I feared you might not know, so I hurried to share it. It seems my concern was unwarranted. Though Su Cloud spoke cheerfully, she regarded Su Caution with a hint of skepticism, pondering, fourth sister has a straightforward nature and rarely ventures out, how does she possess such knowledge? Moreover, upon hearing her tone, could it be that she is acquainted with elegant jade? Contemplating this, she shook her head slightly, but fourth sister has never visited the Lu family mansion, how could she possibly know Madame Lu's granddaughter? Observing Su Cloud's skeptical expression, Su Caution covered her mouth and coughed, forcing a smile as she said, a few days ago, I encountered Madame Lu at grandmother's residence, and she mentioned it. Oh, I see, Su Cloud replied, nodding. As the two engaged in conversation, Grace Child and Rain Love served tea and cakes. Su Caution lifted a teacup and smiled, saying, Fifth sister, please enjoy some tea. Fourth sister is so considerate. Su Cloud raised her teacup, took a sip, and her gaze fell upon the cake. Suddenly, her eyes brightened, and she exclaimed, thousand-layer cake. Fourth sister is truly thoughtful, knowing that this is my favorite. Su Caution was taken aback, thousand-layer cake. She had never been fond of sweets, so such cakes were nearly absent from this courtyard. Why now? Looking up at Grace Child and Rain Love beside her, Su Caution smiled and leaned closer to Su Cloud, whispering, I know that the fourth lady usually restricts your treats, so I prepared something to satisfy your cravings. In contemporary society, women often aspire to a slender figure, yet Su Cloud was the type who would gain weight merely by drinking water, and she had a penchant for cakes. Consequently, to maintain her slim silhouette, the fourth lady enforced strict discipline, absolutely forbidding any cakes or jams. Fourth sister is truly kind to me. Su Cloud grasped Su Caution's hand, her smile radiant as a flower. Su Caution observed the hand she held and reflected, no matter how mature, dignified, and virtuous she appeared under the fourth lady's rigorous guidance, she remained a mere teenage girl. Su Cloud indulged in several bites before setting her hand down, retrieving a handkerchief to wipe her mouth's corner, and shyly smiled at Su Caution, please excuse my behavior, fourth sister. What are you saying, fifth sister? Why be so formal in big sister's presence? With that, she nudged the plate of puff pastries toward Su Cloud, adding, if you wish to eat, then do so. Fourth concubine won't know. No, no, Su Cloud repeatedly waved her hands, though her eyes lingered on the plate of puff pastries. After a moment, she raised her head and inquired, regarding tomorrow's gift for Miss Mu, does fourth sister have any plans? Su Caution pondered briefly before shaking her head and responding, this. Fifth sister knows I am quite opinionated, I wonder if you have any suggestions. I possess a pair of red gold and jade brooches. While they may not be of the highest quality, the design is quite appealing. If fourth sister does not mind, we could present them to Miss Mu. Su Cloud produced a small box from her sleeve and gently placed it on the table. Was she truly so generous? Her enthusiasm must have been spurred by the fourth concubine to entice her. In recent days, she had been visiting morning and night, attempting to curry favor with the old lady. It seemed her efforts had finally borne fruit. Su Caution lowered her gaze and stammered, but sister, cannot afford such expense. What are you saying, fourth sister? Who requires your money? Sue Cloud's expression darkened, revealing her displeasure. But, how can I allow my sister to squander her funds? Sue Caution's eyes widened as she waved her hands. Repeatedly, stammering. Whenever you desire it in the future, come to my place and enjoy some puff pastries. With that, Sue Cloud smiled and pushed the box toward her. How can that be? Sue Caution felt embarrassed. Very well, let us settle it this way. Sue Cloud interrupted, rising to her feet. She glanced at the plate of puff pastries with regret and remarked, "It is getting late, I must take my leave." Fifth sister, it is still early. I still need to visit mother. Thank you, fifth sister. What are you two sisters being so formal about? Chapter 17, Unjustified Benevolence. 2. Time passes swiftly, and before long, darkness enveloped the surroundings. Sue Caution sat silently on the bed, her heart burdened with contemplation. She faintly recalled that in her previous life, during this period, Madame Lu had hosted a banquet to entertain her and her three sisters due to Elegant Jade's arrival. However, at that time, she was financially constrained and lacked an appropriate gift, prompting her to feign illness and decline the invitation. This time, she suspected that Consort Zhao intended to leverage Madame Lu to assess who was deserving of Blue Wind. Elegant Jade was merely a pretext. Sue Caution was absorbed in contemplation when a succession of footsteps approached, accompanied by Grace Child's voice, "Miss, it is already dark." Sue Caution dispelled the thoughts swirling in her mind, and after a moment, she composed herself and said, "Come in. Miss, why not allow this servant to attend to you so that you may rest early?" Grace Child approached Sue Caution and spoke gently. "Yes." Sue Caution averted her gaze and gradually rose to her feet. "Miss, in this servant's opinion, Cody Rhodes is a considerate individual with a commendable character," Grace Child remarked gently as she swiftly removed Sue Caution's coat. In this life, Sue Caution did not retain Cody Rhodes by her side. In a brief period, she allowed Grace Child to arrange some odd jobs for her. Unexpectedly, she managed to persuade Grace Child to advocate on her behalf. Sue Caution lifted her gaze to meet Grace Child's. Since Grace Child's arrival at the General's mansion, she had consistently accompanied her, never straying or forsaking her. Consequently, Sue had never questioned Grace Child's loyalty. It appeared that Grace Child genuinely regarded Cody Rhodes favorably. Early the following morning, Sue Caution prepared herself and ventured outside. As she exited the room, a faint voice caught her attention from the corner of the house. "Sister Grace Child, did I do something wrong?" Cody Rhodes's hesitant voice echoed. "How could that be? You performed exceptionally well." Grace Child's soothing, reassuring voice resonated. But I always sense that the young lady is dissatisfied with me." Cody Rhodes's voice diminished, tinged with a sob. "No, that is because Miss is a man of few words. Throughout this time, Miss has observed and recalled everything I did," Grace Child murmured. "Is that so?" Cody Rhodes inquired with delight. "Certainly, do not overthink, simply perform your duties effectively in the future." "Indeed, I will certainly perform well." "Thank you, Grace Child sister." Cough cough. Sue Caution emitted 2 coughs. Instantly, the voice in the corner of the house ceased. 2 diminutive figures gradually emerged from the shadows in the corner of the house. "Servant greets the young lady, wishing her 10,000 years of happiness." The 2 noticed Sue Caution and promptly offered their salutation, as Eastern Purity remarked. "Yes." Sue Caution turned to Grace Child and inquired, "Grace Child, could you check if 5th Miss is prepared?" Cody Rhodes cast a fleeting glance at Sue Caution and Grace Child, his lips moved, yet ultimately, he remained silent. He lowered his head before turning and departing. Sue Caution gradually advanced until she was merely a step away from Cody Rhodes, then halted and gazed at her in silence. "Miss, what do you desire?" The intense gaze of Sue Caution made Cody Rhodes uneasy. He stepped back and inquired with a quavering voice. "Cody Rhodes, are you prepared to accompany my fifth sister?" Sue Caution inquired calmly. Cody Rhodes was profoundly terrified upon hearing that. She collapsed to her knees with a thud and pleaded in fear, "Servant, the servant does not wish to leave, young lady, please do not cast the servant away." "You're not satisfied? How peculiar. Just yesterday, I observed you recalling fifth sister's preferences so vividly that I assumed you wished to visit her." Sue Caution remarked with composure. "Not willing. This servant is not willing." Cody Rhodes knelt and advanced 2 steps, her hands gripping Sue Caution's shirt tightly. Raising her head, her face was etched with worry and fear as she implored, "Miss, this servant was wrong, I will never again act independently. Please do not dismiss me. From now on, whatever you instruct me to do, I will comply. I will not make decisions on my own again. The adage suggests that individuals aspire to greater heights. Your intentions are evident to me, you wish to pursue fifth sister, and I do not fault you for that." Sue Caution gazed at Ching Wu's still youthful visage and remarked, "If you agree, I will inform the First Lady, I can arrange for your departure today." "No, no." Cody Rhodes promptly struck his head against the ground several times, providing an explanation. Regardless of the fourth Miss's circumstances within the general's mansion, the master, despite any lack of favor, would always retain his status, while the servant, regardless of the master's affection, would remain a servant. She had only attended to the fourth Miss for a few days before being dismissed by her master. If she were to go to the first Madame's residence, would she experience any better days? Is it possible that my fifth sister's position is not favorable? Or do you believe that my fifth sister lacks proper lineage, prompting you to align yourself with my eldest sister?" Sue Caution inquired, tilting her head in uncertainty. "How dare this servant presume?" Cody Rhodes exclaimed, realizing that if Sue Caution's words were to circulate, her prospects of remaining in the general's mansion would be jeopardized. "You young ladies are all esteemed, how could this servant ever be disrespectful?" She then lifted her head, her gaze resolutely fixed on Sue Caution, and declared, "Yet, regardless of how admirable eldest Miss and fifth Miss may be, this servant is committed to following you." "Oh. Why?" Sue Caution inquired, raising an eyebrow in skepticism. Because the young lady possesses a pleasant disposition and treats us servants with great kindness, whereas the fifth young lady is somewhat stern." Cody Rhodes remarked softly, "Furthermore, elder sister Kan Kai, who is with the eldest young lady, and elder sister Thursday Van, who accompanies the fifth young lady, are both rather unapproachable, while elder sister Grace Child regards me as a sister." Gazing into those sincere and earnest eyes, Sue Caution adjusted her shirt and stated, "Get up." "Yes, thank you, miss." Cody Rhodes exhaled deeply and gradually rose to his feet. "Back off," Sue Caution gestured. "Yes." As Sue Caution observed the figure receding into the distance, she reflected, such a genuine and candid maid, had she not endured that lesson of mortality, she would have been touched once again. Today's incident serves as a minor admonition for her, she will undoubtedly exhibit compliance for some time. At that moment, Grace Child approached quickly and stated, "Miss, second Miss, and fifth Miss are prepared and are about to depart. Then let us proceed as well." Sue Caution nodded and exited. Grace Child quickly advanced a few steps, trailing behind Sue Caution. It was only after the figures of Sue Caution and Grace Child faded into the distance that a small figure appeared from the corner of the room. Cody Rhodes used a handkerchief to wipe the sweat from his brow, his gaze fixed on the direction in which Sue Caution had vanished, his heart heavy with uncertainty. Why was this fourth Miss so markedly different from the accounts he had previously heard? He had assumed she was a fragile and obstinate mistress, but with Grace Child on the verge of marriage, it was only natural for her to become her personal maid. Yet, he had never anticipated. Now she no longer appreciates me in this manner. Is it because she is an envoy of the Grand Madam? No, Cody Rhodes can no longer endure this existence as a mere maid. She must devise a strategy to earn the young lady's trust. Cody Rhodes clenched her fists, resolutely determined. Chapter 18, Lou's Palace hosts a banquet. 1. In the carriage, Sue Caution sat quietly on the left, beside Sue Cloud, who wore a joyful expression with sparkling eyes, while Sue Harmony sat opposite, seemingly lost in thought. Sue Caution observed her two elder sisters, surmising that they believed this banquet was secretly orchestrated by Consort Zhao. It was evident that both had invested considerable effort into their attire for the occasion, whether to attract the Third Highness or the Fifth Highness, both were aiming for elevated status. Sue Cloud donned a lake blue silk coat paired with a white embroidered skirt, enhancing her already striking beauty with an air of dignity. Sue Harmony, in a peach-pink coat and a goose-yellow pleated skirt, appeared even more cheerful. Notably, Sue Cloud was no longer her usual composed self, occasionally adjusting her clothing and smoothing her hair. Since the old lady's birthday banquet, where she had glimpsed the elegant and gentle blue wind from a distance, her heart had been captivated. Yet, she had not had the opportunity to formally meet the man of her dreams until now, which filled her with joy. However, Sue Caution recalled that in her previous life, Sue Cloud had married a medicine merchant. Seemingly before Consort Zhao's proposal. In that life, aside from exchanging morning and evening greetings, Sue Cloud had little interaction with others in the mansion, making the specifics of the situation hazy. It appeared that prior to the marriage arrangement, Sue Cloud had fallen gravely ill, reportedly due to a cold. Ultimately, this unrequited love had concluded in disappointment. Fourth sister, where did you say we were? Sue Cloud gently touched Sue Caution's arm, inquiring softly. I don't know, Sue Caution replied, her expression neutral and her tone indifferent. We've been traveling for half an hour, we should be nearing Lou's mansion, right? Sue Cloud murmured. Sue Caution smiled and shook her head. Frustrated by the lack of information, Sue Cloud turned away in silence. After a moment, she turned back and gently lifted a corner of the carriage curtain, intending to glance outside. Oh, I didn't expect fifth sister to be so anxious, Sue Harmony's soft laughter chimed in. You've only been out for a short while, and you're already restless. Don't worry, this banquet is organized solely by Madame Lou, it has nothing to do with your dream person, the Third Highness. Who's anxious? Sue Cloud exclaimed, her cheeks flushing, unsure if it was from embarrassment or provocation at the mention of dream person. I'm anxious, so what if I am? Sue Harmony covered her mouth, laughing. But then again, the Third Highness is of noble birth, possesses grace, and speaks with elegance. It's no wonder. At this point, Sue Harmony paused, smiling as she regarded Sue Cloud. However, given the Third Highness's status, Consort Zhao would undoubtedly select a young lady of appropriate standing as her daughter-in-law. Sue Harmony deliberately emphasized the phrase, appropriate standing. Sue Cloud felt both self-conscious and proud. She took pride in her beauty, yet growing up alongside the esteemed Sue's subtle charm, her status as a concubine left her feeling acutely aware of her position. Now, Sue Harmony's words inadvertently struck a chord within her, provoking an intense anger. You are correct, fifth sister. Sue Harmony observed Sue Cloud's expression, her mood evidently buoyant, and smiled. Sue Cloud's flushed face quickly paled, she clenched her robe, closed her eyes, and took several deep breaths. After a moment, her complexion returned to normal. Sister is right, she managed to say with a forced smile. However, I recall that Consort Zhao once mentioned allowing Third Highness to choose his own companion. Therefore, in my view, status is merely relative, what truly matters are Third Highness's intentions. Upon finishing her statement, Sue Cloud adjusted her sideburns, a radiant smile illuminating her face, strikingly beautiful. Sue Harmony's expression shifted immediately. She chuckled dryly, hee, fifth sister is indeed correct. The two engaged in a brief argument, neither gaining any advantage, leaving them both feeling regretful. They exchanged glances, frustration evident, and fell into silence. Sue Caution, indifferent to the dispute, leaned gently against the carriage, feeling the motion of the vehicle. The corners of her mouth curled into a cold smile. Want to marry Blue Wind? Unbeknownst to her, she would be consumed by that frigid and heartless man. Just as the three Sue Cautions glared at one another within the carriage, it came to a halt. The carriage curtain was lifted, revealing the smiling face of Wang Mama. Second miss, fourth miss, fifth miss, we have arrived at Lu Mansion. Wang Mama, who served alongside the first madam, was known for her courteous demeanor and efficiency, which led the first madam to assign her to accompany Sue Caution and the others to Lu Mansion. The three donned their cloaks and exited the carriage, where several maids and servants hurried over to pay their respects. The three young ladies are well, please follow us. A maid in a small blue cotton coat approached and bowed. The three nodded in acknowledgement, while Sue Cloud and Sue Harmony adjusted their already pristine skirts. Guided by the maid, they proceeded toward the backyard of Lu Mansion. Along the way, pavilions and towers were interspersed, green pine trees shaded the eaves, and jade railings adorned the walls, creating an exquisite and picturesque scene. Winding corridors led beneath intricately carved pavilions, where blue water trickled and fallen flowers floated, exuding elegance and charm. Sue Caution maintained her composed demeanor as she followed the maid, while Sue Harmony and Sue Cloud, despite their dignified smiles, exhibited sparkling eyes and an unmistakable joy. It appeared they genuinely believed this banquet was organized by Consort Zhao to select a concubine for His Highness the Third Prince, with the Lu family taking the initiative. Upon arriving in the backyard, Sue Caution discovered that several young ladies had already gathered in the courtyard, chatting and laughing in groups of 3 or 5, creating a lively atmosphere throughout the entire space. Chapter 19, Invitation to the Lu Palace. 2. The mother at the forefront paused, leaned down, and offered a salute. Madam and the young lady will arrive shortly, please take a moment to rest here. Sue Harmony and Sue Cloud remained silent. Among the young women present, there were several familiar faces. They removed their cloaks and handed them to the maids on either side before proceeding towards their acquaintances. Thank you, Mama. Sue Caution reduced her pace slightly, smiled, and nodded to Mama, who was guiding the way, before proceeding toward a corner with fewer people. Just after taking a few steps, he heard Sue Cloud's voice, fourth sister, over here. It seems that locating a tranquil spot is not feasible, Sue Caution mused internally, as she pivoted and proceeded toward Sue Cloud. This is my fourth sister. Sue Cloud gestured for Sue Caution to take a seat, indicating the young girl in a small pink coat across from them. This is the third young lady of the Collins family in Southern City, Lily Collins. He then pointed to the young girl in a light purple cloak beside him. This is the fifth young lady, Kayla Collins. They exchanged greetings. The Collins family in the South has been engaged in commerce for generations and has amassed considerable wealth. However, from the perspective of the Prime Minister's residence, business is still regarded with disdain. Unexpectedly, Sue Cloud maintained a positive rapport with both individuals. Sue Caution regarded Sue Cloud with astonishment. Lily Collins smiled and remarked, "You have such an elegant and graceful older sister, why didn't you introduce her to us sooner?" My sister excels in everything, she is simply a bit shy and typically remains in her small courtyard, seldom venturing out, Sue Cloud chuckled. How can I remain at home all day? If I have the time, please come to my house to play with my sister, Lily Collins remarked. Indeed, our family consists of only 2 sisters, and seeing each other every day can be quite monotonous, Kayla Collins remarked cheerfully. The kind words and soothing voice elicited a greater sense of empathy in Sue Caution towards the 2 sisters. Everyone was engaged in cheerful conversation when a sudden burst of laughter resonated through the air. All heads turned to see Madame Lu approaching, accompanied by a graceful young girl. The girl, approximately 13 or 14 years old, wore a pink cross-collar dress adorned with a white inner shirt. Her black hair was elegantly styled in a bun, secured with a gold hairpin set with jade, making her appear both beautiful and charming. As the figure approached, becoming increasingly distinct, Su Caution lowered her head, a glimmer of significance flickering in the depths of her eyes. The young lady's attention was entirely directed towards Madame Lu and Elegant Jade, leaving no one to notice Su Caution's peculiar behavior. As Madame Lu approached, the young ladies rose to greet her. After the greeting, Madame Lu gestured towards Elegant Jade and remarked, "This is my granddaughter, Jade, who is the same age as all of you. I encourage everyone to become acquainted." Elegant Jade bears a resemblance to Madame Lu, characterized by delicate eyebrows and prominent cheekbones. However, her round face, adorned with the playful and endearing traits of youth, imparts a gentler demeanor. "Greetings, elder sisters." Elegant Jade acknowledged, smiling warmly. The women reciprocated with a bow. "This Miss Mu appears to be quite approachable." Su Cloud gently nudged Su Caution with her elbow and remarked softly, "Indeed." Su Caution smirked internally, offering a slight nod of agreement. "Very well, now that you have numerous friends, there is no need to rely on your aunt any longer," Madame Lu remarked with a smile, her tone imbued with warmth. "With the aunt present, how could one you possibly feel bored?" Elegant Jade grasped Madame Lu's hand and complimented, "One you merely sought an excuse to draw closer to her aunt." Her tone was innocent, revealing a playful and endearing demeanor. "I know, my Wan Yu is my aunt's little cotton coat." Madame Lu gently pinched Elegant Jade's chubby cheeks, lifted her head, and smiled as she said, "My dear nieces, I have other matters to attend to, so I will not be able to entertain you any longer. My Wan Yu is still quite young. If I have overlooked anything, I hope you will be understanding." Everyone maintained a courteous demeanor for a time. Madame Lu turned her head to signal Elegant Jade. Noticing her slight nod, she smiled and proceeded to depart. Su Caution had been discreetly observing Elegant Jade. Madame Lu's subtle movements certainly did not escape her notice. To others, this appeared to be merely an aunt offering advice to her niece, but Su Caution understood that, given Elegant Jade's intellect and tactics, Madame Lu